Host has actively enjoyed the sport of running and grasped the essence of movement. Reward: buff, fluent English, 1 day. With this buff, the host can speak fluent English. Open your mouth and speak boldly. A trophy husband should not be limited by geography. Foreign heiresses are just as rewarding. Leo's foot, just crossing the threshold into the dorm complex, faltered. He nearly dropped the takeout he'd gotten for Sean and Jordan. An English buff for 1 day? What heiress am I supposed to land in 24 hours? And what happens on day 2? I'd rather have a grasp the essence of calculus buff. God, calculus is killing me. He sighed. Professor Reed had spent her entire life on mathematics. She probably had zero interest in discussing it with him anyway. Best to play to his strengths and avoid his weaknesses. Calculus was officially off the table. He was halfway up the stairs to the 4th floor when a mechanical voice chimed in his head again. Congratulations, host. You have made effective progress with the platinum tier target. Boundless potential, Stella Vance. Her favorability has reached 80, entering the first love stage. No matter who she meets in the future, you will always be the most vivid person in her memory. Please continue your efforts and strive for new heights. Whoosh. Leo, 1 foot on a step and the other midair, froze. He quickly scrambled the rest of the way up to the 4th floor landing, needing the stability. His emotions were a chaotic mess. He figured Stella must be listening to the song he recorded for her right now. She really was a sucker for a nice voice. A warmth spread through him, a mix of excitement and anxiety. What if someone with an even better voice came along? Host has successfully reached 80 favorability with a platinum tier target. Boundless potential for the first time. Reward: 1 stat point. Available for immediate allocation. System upgrading. Upgrade complete. Leo let out a long breath. The system was fast. A real quick-draw artist. After conquering a man and a dog, he'd finally made progress with an actual girl. It was almost enough to make him cry. At the same time, he realized just how damn difficult girls were. With a dog, all you had to do was run with it, play with it, and buy it a few hot dogs, and it was yours for life. With Sean, he hadn't done anything special, just treated him like he always did, maybe offered 1 word of encouragement that one time, and Sean had been moved to tears. But with a girl, you never knew what she was thinking. You never knew what would make her happy or why she was suddenly upset. And you could never, ever be sure if she actually liked you or not. Leo pulled up his stats panel. Sure enough, things had changed. The notes behind vibe and integrity were different. Vibe, 7, plus or minus 2/10. Mood is elevated, but recent fluctuations have been significant. Consider heart health supplements. Integrity, 8, minus 2/10. High moral standing. Pro, easily gains favorability. Con, prone to being taken advantage of, often falls into self-reproach. He didn't quite get what the vibe stat was for. Why did it need its own category? Vibe is a person's mental threshold, the system explained mechanically. When this stat is too low, the host is susceptible to depression and suicidal thoughts. This stat is not constant. It typically declines with age. It also influences the moods of others. Individuals with high vibe are often suited for careers in sales, motivational speaking, wellness coaching, finance, and leadership. Leo processed that. So, it was about how happy he was and how happy he could make other people. Right now, he was doing okay. Maybe it was because he was young, but he felt pretty positive. As for the minus 2 next to integrity, he didn't need an explanation. He got it. There were too many temptations, and his self-control was slipping. Please allocate stat points with caution. All stats are interconnected. His first instinct was to boost his intellect again. He hadn't really noticed the changes from the appearance bumps, but the increase in intellect was palpable. He spoke with more thought, fumbled his words less, and wasn't constantly saying the wrong thing. Things he used to be clueless about now made a hazy kind of sense. But honestly, Leo felt that as his intellect increased, his vibe and integrity had taken a hit. Smart people often saw high morals as a kind of stupidity, leading to constant self-doubt. And being smarter seemed to kill simple joy. He used to be happy-go-lucky, but now he'd overthink things, and the fun would just evaporate. Sigh. When he thought about it that way, idiots were probably the happiest people, their vibe stat maxed out. Geniuses were often miserable, getting stuck in their own heads until they broke. Maybe that's how it worked. God really was fair when creating people. This time, perhaps because he had a bit more intellect to work with, Leo took a more balanced approach. He decided to shore up his weakest link. Everything else was a 7 or 8, but his stamina was still at a 6. Plus, dealing with a titan like Professor Reed, he was out of his depth in terms of knowledge and experience. Showing off his intelligence might not be the best move. A little earnest cluelessness might be more endearing. He put the point into stamina. Stats updated. Please continue your efforts to become a trophy husband at the earliest opportunity. Leo checked his new panel. Stamina, 7, +1/10. Average physical condition. Permanent strength enhancement buff active. Continue a balanced exercise regimen and you will maintain a slight advantage over most humans. Intellect, 7, ±1/10. Average intelligence. Keep working, host. A handsome face is a dime a dozen, but a fascinating soul will make an heiress unable to live without you. Vibe, 7, ±2/10. Mood is elevated, but recent fluctuations have been significant. Consider heart health supplements, e.g. coenzyme Q10. Integrity, 8, -2/10. High moral standing. Pro, easily gains favorability. Con, prone to being taken advantage of, often falls into self-reproach. Appearance, 7, ±1/10. Average appearance. Keep working, host. A handsome face is the foundation for catching an heiress's eye in the first place. Was that an ad? The system was getting surprisingly practical. Had it finally decided he was a lost cause and needed to start pulling its own weight? Did the upgrade come with a corporate sponsor? Was the system run by a pharmaceutical company? Leo found it bizarrely fascinating. Coenzyme Q10. He pulled out his phone and searched it on TikTok. CoQ10 has significant benefits for the heart, helping to combat fatigue, protect cardiac function, and regulate the nervous system. Sold. He'd buy some later. He had been feeling like his heart was doing acrobatics lately. When he placed his hand over his chest, especially the hand wearing the two-tone Rolex, he could feel it pounding, loud and clear. Leo walked the last few steps to room 402. Sean was already up, locked in a fierce battle at his computer. But it wasn't a game on the screen, it was video editing software. Leo had glanced at it a few times over the past couple of days. It looked brutally complicated, clipping and splicing segments, syncing audio, color correcting. It was enough to make your eyes bleed, way harder than playing League. But Sean looked cooler editing videos than he ever did gaming. The intense focus made his acne-scarred face look serious, almost distinguished. There was a sharp edge to his expression. It was true what they said, passion was a man's best look. Right now, Sean looked solid. Everything about him seemed solid, even his hair, which was standing straight up because he hadn't washed it in days. Jordan's head emerged groggily from under his comforter at the sound of the door opening. Seeing Leo, he let out a groan. "Oh man, you're already back from your run? Dude, I'm screwed. My dad just summoned me home. No idea what for, but it's probably another group criticism session. God, old people are terrifying. They get their emotional validation from yelling at me." Sean took off his headphones when Leo came in. Hearing Jordan's whining, he chuckled and took the breakfast Leo handed him, placing Jordan's portion on his desk. Sean was naturally envious of Jordan's life. No worries about money. So what if he got yelled at a little? But he also got it. Jordan had an older brother who was supposedly a superstar, graduated from an Ivy League, already making waves in the family business. Jordan didn't exactly scream heir apparent. Some parents favored one kid over the other, and Jordan seemed to be all in on the firstborn. Jordan had a great personality, though, and was pretty easygoing. He'd complain and vent, but once it was out of his system, he was back to his happy-go-lucky self. Out of sight, out of mind. Big-hearted and well-fed, Jordan was easily the happiest guy in the dorm. Sure enough, after his one complaint, he spotted a hard-boiled egg in his breakfast and cheered up instantly. "My dad named me Jordan Davis. You know, like a champion. I swear one day, the great Jordan is going to do something epic and show my dad and my brother what's up. You can't underestimate the underdog." Puffed. Leo pinched his nose and backed out of the room. In his passionate declaration, Jordan had let rip a silent but deadly fart that smelled distinctly of onions. Sean scrambled to open a window, fanning the air with a textbook. Jordan, looking embarrassed, bolted from the room too, coming to stand next to Leo. Leo tried to edge away. It was no use. "It's cool, man," Jordan said, sidling closer. "The fart's in the room. I'm clean." Leo glanced at Sean, who was still valiantly trying to air the place out. He and Jordan waited in the hallway. A moment later, Leo's phone buzzed. He checked it, a new message. It was from his uncle, Clay Foster. "Leo, I'm in Ridgefield for a business trip. Might have some free time tomorrow afternoon to come see you." Leo felt a knot of anxiety. His uncle radiated this intimidating superachiever aura, and as a slacker senior, Leo always felt a bit inadequate around him. They'd been close when he was a kid. He remembered sitting on his uncle's shoulders, his uncle boosting him up into a tree to pick peaches. A caterpillar had stung his hand, and it had swollen up like a dinner roll. His mom was about to tan his hide, but his uncle stepped up and took the blame, saying he was the one who wanted the peaches. His mom hadn't bought it, and he'd gotten a spanking anyway. Thinking back, something about it felt off. His uncle had this subtle way of playing the victim. It was a vibe Leo had only started to recognize recently, after spending more time around girls. Maybe that spanking from a decade ago wasn't so unjust after all. He remembered how, no matter what his dad and his Aunt Skye did, his Uncle Clay was rarely the one who got in trouble with his grandparents. It was always his dad who took the heat. Father and son, same fate. The naming of his dad's siblings was a funny story. His grandma said they were named based on the weather. When her firstborn arrived, there was a thunderstorm, so Leo's dad was named Ray. When the second came, the sky was overcast and gloomy, refusing to rain. They wanted to name him something rain-related, but eventually settled on Clay. His aunt, born on a bright, sunny day, was named Skye. Apparently, when Uncle Clay got to college, he wanted to change his name. By then, his dad, Ray, was working as a machinist in a factory, the clang of metal his daily thunder, and his Aunt Skye was still in high school. Grandma, figuring a college kid's opinion mattered, felt a little bad about the name and went to a local psychic, slipping her a big wad of cash to come up with something better. But the psychic took one look at the names of the 3 children and, pointing to Clay, marveled, a dragon in a pond. When the winds of fortune blow, he will soar into the sky. A name of great success. His grandparents were thrilled. No name change needed. Grandma, feeling confident in her naming abilities, paid extra to ask about the other 2. The psychic pointed to Skye's name. She will win the hearts of many, achieve greatness, and gain both fame and fortune. A leader of people. His grandparents doted on their youngest, and while the prediction felt a bit over the top, they were happy as long as it was good. Finally, the psychic pointed to Ray's name and shook her head. His fate is forged in metal, but thunder and fire work against it. His career will lack focus. For every 10 ventures, 9 will fail. Only with intense dedication can he hope for success. It is an average fate, with fortune hidden within hardship. They had gone to change Clay's name and left thinking he and Skye had the best fates, while their eldest was doomed. But Ray was already a grown man, working a steady job at the factory. What was the point of changing his name now? So they said nothing. Not long after, the factory was on the verge of bankruptcy, and both of Leo's parents were laid off. His grandparents, full of regret, finally told the family the story. Leo only knew about it because his mom brought it up during an argument with his dad. He'd always found it strange that his grandparents, who seemed so practical, would believe in fate. But then, after graduating, his uncle's career took off like a rocket. He married a professor's daughter, got a position at the university, became a professor himself, and even won a prestigious research grant. His Aunt Skye, who couldn't even braid her own hair and was an average student, married a man whose political career skyrocketed, and she was eventually transferred from teaching to a cushy job at the Board of Education. And his father, Ray Foster, went from being a master machinist to selling food from a cart. He worked himself to the bone, waking up at 3 in the morning to prepare food, waiting for the sun to rise over his steaming cart. Eventually, he managed to open a small restaurant, where he greeted every customer with a weary but hopeful smile. The most glorious time of his father's life, Leo realized, was probably when he was wielding a heavy hammer, the deafening, thunderous blows echoing the name he was given. His name hadn't been wrong. The world had just changed. After a full air exchange, the dorm room was finally breathable again. The building was designed with a central hallway and windows on both sides, so opening the door created a perfect cross breeze. Jordan crept back inside, sniffing cautiously. "Smell's gone. We're good." Leo and Sean just stared at him. Leo started packing a small bag. Jordan shielded his eyes dramatically. "The light. It's blinding. Is there a sniper? Am I a target?" Sean, sipping boiled water with his egg, watched Jordan's antics with amusement. A glint of light had danced across the room as Leo moved his arm. The sun, catching the face of his watch, sent a beam of light circling the dorm like a spotlight, occasionally flashing across Jordan's desk. "I was running with the princess this morning," Leo explained, sitting down at his own desk. He felt like he was giving a formal deposition. "I tried to give the Rolex back, but she took it, peeled off the protective film, and put it right back on my wrist. Told me not to take it off. The mood was, well, I couldn't really say no." And then, Jordan asked, leaning forward eagerly. "And then nothing. We finished our run. I bought her a breakfast burrito, she went back to her dorm, and I came here to get you guys food." Sean paused. "You bought the princess a breakfast burrito? Man, she's low maintenance." Jordan cut to the chase. Did you guys kiss? The blunt question made Leo flush slightly. Get lost. So that's a no. Jordan shook his head, a look of profound disappointment on his face. Sean just watched the show, munching on his breakfast. He noticed Leo packing a change of clothes. You're not planning on coming back tonight? Sean asked, a teasing glint in his eye. Is the princess that bold? Leo, my man, you gotta protect yourself out there. It's not what you think. It's not for Stella. It's for Professor Reed. Sean, huh? Jordan, what? I ran into Professor Reed, the one who teaches our calculus class. This morning, Leo explained, since he'd be gone overnight and needed to let them know. She has a conference in the city this afternoon, and her assistant called in sick. She asked me to help carry her bags. She said if it gets too late, I might have to stay over. Dude, that's an opportunity. Jordan yelped. If I'd known you could run into Professor Reed there, I'd be running every single day. Sean was envious too, but the thought of spending a whole day with the notoriously stern professor made his skin crawl. Standing in her presence during class was enough to make his toes curl in his shoes. Carrying her bags? That was a level of terror he wasn't ready for. That opportunity wasn't for him. The forecast said it might rain this afternoon and tomorrow, Sean said practically. You should take an umbrella. Leo hadn't even thought of that. The sun was out now, but it had been overcast this morning. He wondered if it had something to do with his Uncle Clay visiting the city. At a family dinner once, his aunt had joked that wherever Clay went on a business trip, it rained. He was a walking rain god. Thanks, Sean. Leo rummaged through a drawer and found his old umbrella. He rarely used it. For a light drizzle he'd just run, and in a downpour, an umbrella was useless anyway. Jordan handed his over. Take mine. I'm just going home anyway. I'll use yours if I need it. Thanks, Jordan. Leo took it. Jordan's umbrella was new and sturdy looking, a big black canopy that would definitely block sun and rain. He tucked it into the side pocket of his backpack, putting a water bottle in the other. He packed his change of clothes, and Jordan added a travel pack of wet wipes and tissues. The wet wipes had a cute floral pattern. Very Jordan. Leo felt like he was being sent off on some epic quest, armed with the well wishes of his elders. He took another quick shower and changed. Not that it made much difference. He put on a clean white t-shirt and track pants, basically the same outfit. Jordan offered his styling services, which Leo firmly refused. He was fine as he was. Trying too hard for an important event would just make him feel awkward and unnatural. Better to stick with what was comfortable. In critical moments, a calm mind was the best accessory. Leo noticed that since the system upgrade, there were now 2 modes for his daily schedule. One was the default mode, where the system assigned him tasks. The other was a self-directed mode, where he could set his own plan. There was a note attached to the new mode. Host is encouraged to actively manage his own time. Do not waste it. Time waits for no one. If you don't work hard now, you'll be too old to work hard later. Start now, become a trophy husband sooner, and enjoy life earlier. He decided to try the new feature. After packing, he headed out of the dorm to study. Since he had the fluent English buff, he figured he should brush up on his speaking skills. The buff enhanced what was already there. It didn't create it from nothing. Sean tagged along, camera in hand. His daily footage. None of his recent videos had gone viral, but he'd adjusted his mindset and wasn't so anxious about it anymore. He could see progress, slow and steady. His views and likes were gradually increasing, possibly from residual fans of his popular organization and singing videos. If someone watched one of your videos, the algorithm was more likely to show them another. He just had to be patient and keep creating content. The worst-case scenario was moving back home to work on the farm. He wouldn't starve. Plenty of his old high school friends who hadn't gone to college were doing just fine. One of them had even invited him to his wedding over the fall break. With his new, calmer perspective, Sean held his phone steadier. Leo, having been filmed for days now, was used to it. He still cringed watching the videos of himself later, but he was getting over it. He figured it was a good thing. Practicing his spoken English out loud would feel less idiotic with Sean there as a distraction. They didn't go to a classroom, which would be too disruptive. Instead, they found a spot in the garden outside the main academic building. College campuses were great for that, full of green space. A long, covered walkway lined the garden, with benches scattered along it. It was overcast now, so the sun wasn't an issue. Leo set out his books and the water bottle he'd brought. The system strongly recommended hot water. 21-year-old Leo had surrendered. The wellness journey starts now. Besides, bottled water cost money. Little expenses added up. If you could drink free water, you drank free water. Sean filmed a few establishing shots of the building, even capturing a golden butterfly fluttering by. Leo opened his English textbook and started reading aloud. It was awkward at first, but soon he found his rhythm. After each sentence, he'd pause, feeling the pronunciation. With his voice of clarity buff and the new fluent English buff, his confidence grew. He read louder, like a child first learning to talk, stumbling at first, but once they get it, they can't stop, their voice getting louder and clearer with every word. As he read, he thought about his last conversation with Jessica Monroe. Her English was so colloquial, full of slang that would be marked wrong on an exam, but was perfectly natural in conversation. Real life didn't follow a grammar textbook. Lost in his reading, he forgot Sean was even there. Sean filmed intently, focusing on shots that didn't show Leo's full face, a technique that had worked well for the library video. He tried to capture the raw audio as cleanly as possible. Man, Leo sounds good, he thought, a little envious. Sean had always been self-conscious about his English. Coming from a rural area, he'd started learning late, and his accent, thick even in his native tongue, was heavier in English. It had always dragged down his grades. Listening to Leo now, he seemed to glow. If you put him in a tuxedo, you could easily pass him off as a half-American heir who'd just returned from studying abroad. Sean was already planning the edit in his head, getting more excited by the second. Leo continued, completely focused. After a while, Sean gave him a quiet signal that he was done and headed back. Leo nodded and kept reading. It wasn't until he'd finished the entire bottle of water and his bladder screamed for a break that he realized an hour had passed. He felt incredibly productive. He checked his phone and saw a bunch of notifications. Paige Kennedy had sent him a string of angry Cupid emojis, each one more comically furious than the last. He saved a few of the funnier ones, thinking Stella might like them. He replied, "I promise I'll walk Moose tomorrow. Double the time, no extra charge." Then he saw a message from Alex Young. The secretary rarely messaged him privately, so Leo thought it might be something important. He opened it and was floored. Jordan must have mentioned the Professor Reed thing in their group chat. Alex's message was a detailed dossier. Evelyn Reed, 69 years old. History of coronary artery disease, high blood pressure, diabetes. Has some thinning hair, she's sensitive about it. So make sure her hair doesn't get wet if it rains. Her gums have been inflamed lately, so she can't eat spicy food. I have some individually wrapped chrysanthemum tea bags in my desk drawer. You can take a few. Also some Ricola. Grab those too. Leo felt like he should be kneeling as he read. No wonder Alex was such a big shot on campus. The guy was a walking intelligence agency. He sent a voice message back. "Alex, thank you so much. I owe you dinner when I get back." Alex replied a few minutes later, "No big deal. I happened to learn that stuff while helping out at the University Health Center. Do a good job, Leo. This is a great opportunity. Go get him. We'll celebrate on your benefactor's dime when you get back." Leo stared at his phone, feeling a wave of gratitude. Here he was, just a temporary gopher, and Alex was behind the scenes, running mission support for him. He was the youngest in the dorm, the freshman of the group, but in that moment he felt truly looked after. He was so lucky to have these guys as his roommates. "Let's do this, Leo. Time to crush it." Leo finished his morning study session, had a yogurt and some fruit, and took a half-hour break. He found a spot under the huge old tree near the lecture halls, the one where couples were always wrapped around each other. He looked up at the dense canopy. It really did feel private and safe. No wonder they felt so comfortable making out down here. Shameless. It was cool under the tree. Leo sat for a while, accepting the system's rewards. It was amazing how getting real-time feedback for every little thing, studying, exercising, was such a powerful motivator. Because he had planned his own schedule today, the pace felt a little slower. He'd already run, so he skipped swimming. After practicing English, he had some downtime. He thought about going to the library, but felt too far, and he didn't want to be late meeting Professor Reed. The truth was, when you had something important to do in the afternoon, it was hard to focus on studying in the morning. Human self-discipline was a fragile thing. After finishing his work, Leo found himself extending his break, just wandering aimlessly down the campus paths. These last few days felt incredibly long. 64 chapters long, to be exact. It turned out that once you decided to change, it was never too late. He had been so busy studying, working out, and by sheer chance meeting all these new people. He used to be terrified to even open his mouth, but once he did, he realized it wasn't so hard. People were just people. He was still a little jittery about the afternoon. At first, he'd just been excited, feeling like he'd won the lottery. But after his roommate's advice, he started to get into the right headspace. Professor Reed hadn't asked him along just to carry a bag. She could carry her own damn bag. She was getting older. She likely needed someone around to help with day-to-day things, to handle any unexpected issues at the conference. That was his real purpose. He had to nail that part first before thinking about anything else. It was like being a student. First, you prove you can handle your classes and get good grades, then you can talk about doing other things. You have to prove yourself. He couldn't just show up and act like a clueless student. If he was truly useless, why would she have asked him? Leo rarely took the time to just walk and think like this. As he meandered, he felt his mind settle, his perspective sharpening. He felt more confident about the afternoon. Having the trophy husband system was a stroke of luck, but it was easy to lose yourself in it, to wonder if you were still you or just a puppet of the system. This moment of reflection cleared his head. He was definitely himself, a living, breathing person. He was about to head to the dining hall to grab lunch for himself and Sean. Jordan had already left for home when a mechanical voice returned. Host has given himself a 1-hour break, learning to think independently and digest recent lessons. Host has grasped the spiritual essence of progress. On the path forward, one must occasionally stop to rest and admire the scenery. Rest is also a form of progress. Reward, buff, enhance palate one day. With this buff, you will more directly experience the essence of fine cuisine and enjoy the pleasure that food brings. A balanced life is a sustainable life. Leo looked toward the campus dining hall, where the chefs cooked every meal with the cautious precision of an imperial cook terrified that the student emperor might accidentally taste something delicious and demand it every day. As a result, they consistently made everything terrible. Giving him an enhanced palate buff to eat cafeteria food didn't feel like much of a reward. Back in the dorm, he tasted the food he'd bought. Yep, consistently, impressively bad. No danger of the university's secret master chefs accidentally showing their talent today. After eating, he washed up, making sure there were no stray bits of food stuck in his teeth, then rested for a bit. At 12:30, he headed out. He was supposed to meet Professor Reed at 1 o'clock at the faculty housing entrance. It was a 10-minute walk at most, but he left 20 minutes early to account for any surprises. Just as he was leaving, Sean handed him a small bottle of motion sickness pills. My mom gets car sick all the time. Take these just in case. Leo, ever the good sport, stuffed them in his bag. Not there, Sean chided, like a mother hen. Put them in that small outer pocket of your backpack, so they're easy to find. Under Sean's watchful eye, Leo finally left the dorm. He walked quickly to the faculty housing complex. Thankfully, it was overcast, so he didn't break a sweat. As he arrived, he saw the same guard from before in the security booth. This time, inspired by Alex Yang's incredible networking skills, the guy even had connections at the health center. Leo decided to be more proactive. He walked up and gave the guard a friendly hello. Hey kid, come on over and get some of this fan, the guard said with a smile. Leo was pleasantly surprised. By initiating contact with an NPC, he had unlocked a cool breeze +1 bonus. The oscillating fan felt good, and it kept the mosquitoes away. Here to see Cody, the guard asked, jumping right into conversation. Leo felt a surge of gratitude for the warning. Sometimes the people we overlook are the ones paying the most attention. You think you're being discreet, but you're an open book. A good reason not to cause trouble. No, sir. I'm helping Professor Reed. She has a conference in the city, and I'm carrying her bags. Oh, helping out Evelyn, huh? I heard about that. Her assistant, Ms. Holloway, is pregnant. Got terrible morning sickness. NPC Leo had acquired a crucial piece of intel related to a main quest. He also mentally noted that the guard, who looked at least a decade older than Professor Reed, had just called her Evelyn. Leo had only heard that her assistant was on leave. He hadn't felt it was his place to ask why. Now he knew. If it was pregnancy, he remembered his Aunt Skye being miserable for the first trimester, but fine after that. That meant this opportunity might last for a while. It was the perfect chance for him, a temporary gig that didn't require benefits or a salary negotiation. It was basically an internship, and most internships didn't pay or come with a world-class professor as your mentor. Feeling cheerful, he kept chatting with the guard, who was clearly bored and happy for the company. Leo's pleasant voice helped. The conversation drifted, and eventually the guard dropped a bomb. I'm retired, you know. Nothing to do. I wanted to go fishing, but the wife's always worried I'll fall in the river and drown. So my son set me up with this gig. This is a great job, sir, Leo said, looking around the surprisingly well-equipped security booth. There was a TV and an air conditioner in addition to the fan. His dorm room didn't even have AC. It's quiet, nice environment, you can read or use your phone. Honestly, after we graduate, most of us won't find a job this good. Your son really took care of you. This wasn't the main campus gate. It was a secondary entrance for faculty housing, mostly dealing with familiar faces. The position felt created. The guard chuckled. Haha, it's not bad. You probably know my son, Walt Jr. Leo blinked, confused. Why would he know a security guard's son? The guard puffed out his chest proudly. My son is Walter Roberts. Leo's brain took a second to connect the dots. Walter Roberts. Dean Walter Roberts. The vice president of the university. His knees went weak. He almost collapsed onto the stool. Just then, a car pulled up. The guard ended the conversation, looking pleased with himself after the flex. "Welp, that's your ride for Evelyn. You'd better get over there." Leo stood up. "Thank you, Mr. Roberts. I'll come chat with you again soon." A black luxury minivan pulled up. Leo didn't know much about cars. His family had a basic Volkswagen sedan, but this one was spacious as 7-seater. As he looked at it, he felt a flicker of anxiety. A few days ago, he would have just hopped in without a thought. Now, he was plagued with a new question. Where was he supposed to sit? The front passenger seat had the best view. Behind the driver were 2 captain's chairs and a bench seat in the very back. If this were Alex Young, he'd probably already be chatting up the driver, maybe even offering him a cigarette. Alex didn't smoke, but he always had a pack on him. Now Leo understood why. Some of these life skills couldn't be learned from a book. No one teaches you the proper seating etiquette for a chauffeur car. Leo's social battery was already drained from the chat with the guard. The driver looked tough, like a guy you didn't mess with. Leo had no idea how to start a conversation. Thankfully, he didn't have to wait long. A moment later, Professor Reed emerged from her building. She had changed into a different outfit, a chic, tailored suit made from a heavy, dark-patterned fabric. The material looked expensive, and the style was timeless, not at all matronly. Leo suddenly thought of his mom. His dad always teased her for caring about her appearance, but thinking back, she didn't have many nice outfits. She was only in her early 40s, yet she dressed older than the nearly 70-year-old professor in front of him. If he ever made real money, he was going to buy his mom a whole new wardrobe. She deserved to dress up now, not when she was old. But by the time he had money, she would be old. The thought spurred him on. "You have to hurry, Leo. Your loved ones are getting older." Professor Reed smiled when she saw the neatly dressed young man waiting for her by the car. "Leo, you're early." "Good afternoon, Professor. I just got here." The driver greeted her as well, calling her Evelyn. Leo's mind clicked again, just like the guard. It was a nickname that made her feel younger. Professor Reed, it seemed, wanted to project a more youthful image. Leo had frantically Googled seating chart for VIP in car while waiting. The internet said the seat of honor was typically the one diagonally behind the driver. But Leo hesitated. He personally hated sitting by the door, feeling exposed every time it opened. He figured everyone had their preferences. He'd wait for her to get in first. As she approached, the driver, whose name was Walt, quickly got out and opened both rear sliding doors. Professor Reed sat in the seat directly behind him. Leo took the one next to her by the door. So much for Google. If he'd had better social skills, he might have just asked the driver. He still had a lot to learn. Once inside, Leo had the presence of mind to place Professor Reed's bags on the back seat, along with his own backpack. She had two, a briefcase and a personal tote. He'd been a beat too slow when she first came out. Walt had already grabbed her tote bag. Leo's first chance to be a good assistant missed. The real world was competitive as hell. Sitting next to the professor, the silence felt heavy. He had been dreading this hour-long drive, wondering what on earth they would talk about. But now, he realized just being in the car was an achievement. Watching Walt hustle to open doors and carry bags, he understood that those were supposed to be his jobs. Professor Reed's eyes fell on the Rolex on Leo's left wrist. She was sitting to his left, so it was in her direct line of sight. She then glanced down at his shoes. Shoes told you a lot about a person. She wasn't a brand snob. The bespoke linen suit she was wearing was custom-made and cost more than most designer labels. But at her age, she knew things. Leo's clothes were generic student wear. When she'd asked for a background check, the file she got on Leo Foster was unremarkable. Average student, clean disciplinary record, uncomplicated family, no obvious connections. Just a kid from a regular suburban family. But seeing him up close now, she sensed there was more to him. "What did you have for lunch?" she asked, breaking the silence. Leo told her he ate at the dining hall. "And what do your parents do?" "They own a small restaurant," he answered truthfully. "Is business good?" she asked with a smile. Leo thought about it. It was a neighborhood place. The regulars loved his dad's cooking, and even people who had moved away still came back for it. For their little street, business was good. "Yes, it's pretty good," he nodded. Professor Reed could have asked how many people they employed to gauge the scale of the business, but she let it drop. It was just small talk. Up front, Walt chimed in. "So you're a rich kid?" "Huh? Not at all, sir," Leo said quickly. "Just a normal family. I don't even have my driver's license yet." Walt boasted that he had a commercial driver's license. It felt like a subtle power play. A few days ago, Leo might have been impressed and started asking him all about how to get a CDL, nervously chattering away and revealing his entire life story. But now he glanced at Professor Reed. Her brow was slightly furrowed. She didn't seem to appreciate the driver's loud voice or the fact that he was talking at all. She had come to Northwood State for a quiet, healthy retirement. A chatty driver was unprofessional and probably felt unsafe to her. So Leo didn't take the bait. Instead, he turned to the professor. "Ma'am, I brought some motion sickness pills. Would you like one?" She smiled. "Not right now, thank you. As long as Walt drives smoothly, I'll be fine." Leo noted that when he'd called her ma'am instead of professor, she seemed to relax, even pleased. Professor was a title of authority. Ma'am or teacher was more personal, younger. And her comment was a gentle rebuke to the driver. Leo's brain filed away another data point. After that, Professor Reed closed her eyes to rest. Leo did the same. It was nearly an hour to the city center. He set a half-hour timer for a nap in his mind. The habit of a daily nap, once formed, was hard to break. Without it, he felt sluggish all afternoon. With it, his mind stayed sharp well into the evening. He fell asleep quickly. Professor Reed was only pretending. When the driver braked sharply to overtake another car, her eyes snapped open. She glanced out the window just as a large truck rumbled past, startling her. She turned and saw that Leo was fast asleep, his breathing even. He was a tidy sleeper, leaning back against the seatbelt buckled. His long eyelashes cast shadows on his cheeks. He looked peaceful, his hands clasped over his stomach. The watch looked good on his wrist. It made her think of her grandson. She'd have to buy him one. Youth was a wonderful thing, to be able to sleep so soundly. She watched him for a moment before closing her eyes again, this time drifting into a light doze. Up front, Walt drove in silence. While waiting at a long red light, he glanced in the rearview mirror. He saw the sleeping college kid. He'd initially been skeptical. Why would Professor Reed want a student as a temporary assistant? He knew her regular assistant, Ms. Holloway, was out, and her husband had slipped him 2 cartons of cigarettes to keep an eye on things, a tacit request to make sure Holloway's job was safe. But a college kid posed no threat. He was just a greenhorn. Walt had been prepared to do a little something to earn those cigarettes, maybe make the kid look bad. But seeing him sleeping so peacefully and remembering the professor's questions about his family, he figured the kid was probably well off. As the light stayed red, Walt looked again and finally noticed the watch. Holy crap. He didn't know many watch brands, but he knew the Rolex Crown. Good grades, good family, good money. The rich really do have it all. There was no point in comparing. What was he even worried about? A college kid with a Rolex wasn't going to fight for a low-paying assistant job. He was probably just doing this for college credit or for fun. The light turned green. Walt focused on the road, driving with renewed care. They had arrived. Leo had been awake for a few minutes, but kept quiet, not wanting to disturb Professor Reed. As the van stopped, Walt jumped out and hurried to open the doors. Leo was puzzled. The driver's attitude seemed to have done a complete 180 during nap. When they first gotten in, Leo felt a distinct chill from him, as if his unshakable core buff had failed. Now, for some reason, the guy was all smiles. He didn't even compete to carry the bags. He handed Professor Reed's tote directly to Leo. "Professor, call me if you need anything. And you, Leo, here's my card. You contact me too." Walt handed Leo a business card before getting back in the van and driving away from the hotel entrance. Leo felt a flush of embarrassment. He'd been awake for the last part of the ride. He could have been the one to ask for the driver's contact information. He just hadn't thought of it. These were the kinds of things you only learned through experience. He also noted that in this more formal setting, the driver had switched from calling her Evelyn back to Professor. As they got out, a well-dressed, middle-aged man rushed out to greet them. He took Professor Reed's hands in both of his, shaking them warmly while bowing his head slightly. "Professor Reed, you're here? You look younger every time I see you. Let me show you in. Professor Thorne and the others have already arrived and are waiting for you." Before Leo could process it, Professor Reed was being ushered inside. He followed behind, carrying the bags. He'd always thought the pinnacle of a VIP welcome was a line of beautiful women in elegant dresses. But today he realized his mistake. There were conventionally attractive hosts at the door, but the person greeting Professor Reed was this successful-looking man in a tailored suit. He had the same aura of quiet authority as Leo's uncle. For a man like that to be on greeting duty showed just how important Professor Reed was. The real power move wasn't having a pretty girl as your assistant. It was having a man. Leo, looking boyish in comparison, did his best to walk with a confident posture, not wanting to embarrass the professor. The man deliberately slowed his pace for her. Leo followed, listening to them talk, hoping to absorb some knowledge. The man, who was clearly a big deal himself, was a master of flattery. He complimented her youth, her academic achievements, her brilliant mind, and the success of her protégés. It was an art form. He was dropping names of theories and papers Leo had never heard of, The mathematical problems arising from general relativity and string theory. Your systematic development of partial differential equation methods in differential geometry. It was all in English, but it was a foreign language to Leo. He felt like Professor Reed's brain was a vast mountain range, each peak storing immense knowledge, while his was a smooth, polished sphere. Any piece of information you placed on it would just slide right off. His respect for her climbed to a new level. You couldn't truly appreciate how brilliant someone was until you got a glimpse of their world. It was like with Alex Young. He'd always known Alex was smart, but after seeing that detailed message, he realized Alex was on a completely different plane of existence. By the time they reached the conference hall, Leo had learned a masterclass in networking. He followed Professor Reed inside. No one stopped him. He knew he couldn't compete on intellectual flattery, so he defaulted to a different role model, his dad. How does Dad take care of Mom? The air conditioning in the hall was blasting. As soon as Professor Reed sat down, Leo draped the shawl he'd been carrying over her shoulders. There was a bottle of mineral water at her place setting, along with a ceramic mug. Servers were walking around with pitchers. Leo found a server, requested a glass cup, and took out one of the chrysanthemum tea bags Alex had given him. He placed it in the glass and filled it with hot water. A beautiful, large chrysanthemum flower unfurled, filling the glass with its delicate aroma. With his duties done for the moment, he leaned in. "Professor, I'll be just outside. Please let me know if you need anything." As Leo stepped away, a man sitting next to her, whom she had greeted as Professor Thorne, chuckled. "Evelyn, you're doing well for yourself. Your last assistant was sharp, but this new one is even more considerate." Professor Reed lifted the glass, inhaling the fragrant steam. "He's one of my students. My assistant is on maternity leave, so he's just helping out for the day. I'm not as young and strong as you are, Marcus." Professor Thorne, a man of 58, laughed heartily at being called young and strong. "Ah, so he's one of your star pupils? He seemed like a fine young man, very composed." Professor Reed just smiled. "A star pupil who had failed basic calculus twice. He is very steady," she said, which was not a lie. Outside the hall, there was a lounge area with sofas. Leo sat down, unaware that Alex's fancy tea had just scored him another point. He'd assumed it was just regular tea. In reality, that single bag was from a box that cost over $100. It was a gift from one of his grandfather's old connections. Leo felt a little smug. He'd channeled his dad's energy. His dad was always doting on his mom, bringing her things, feeling he had to make up for the hard life she'd had since marrying him. It seemed to be working. Professor Reed had looked pleased. His confidence grew. He remembered something, took out his phone, and snapped a picture of the conference banner hanging outside the hall. He opened his chat with Stella Vance. He sent her the picture, followed by a voice message. "Made it to the conference. It's about to start, so I'm waiting outside." Then he sent one of the angry cute bunny emojis he'd stolen from Paige Kennedy. "Leo." He looked up startled. "Uncle, what are you doing here?" He couldn't believe he'd run into his uncle at the conference entrance, of all places. It was surreal. He was happy to see him, though. His uncle was more handsome than the man who had greeted Professor Reed, slimmer, with better features. The Foster men weren't blessed with height, however, and Leo could tell from his uncle's polished dress shoes that he was wearing lifts, though he still fell just short of 6 feet. His uncle, Clay, wore gold-rimmed glasses and was impeccably dressed. The steel Rolex on his wrist was a familiar sight, peeking out from under his shirt cuff. It seemed a love for watches ran in the family. Clay wore a crisp white shirt and black trousers. Leo wore a white t-shirt and black track pants. Both had a Rolex on their left wrist. Looking at them side by side, they could have passed for brothers. Uncle Clay was the best-looking of his siblings, inheriting the best features from both of his parents. Leo used to lag behind in the looks department, but the recent points he'd put into his appearance stat had finally put them on a more even footing. Clay Foster was pleasantly surprised to see his nephew. There's a natural affinity for younger relatives who look like you, a pull of shared genes that makes you want to take care of them. "My professor is attending the conference, and I'm helping her carry her bags," Leo explained, gesturing to the tote bag by his feet. Clay's eyes flickered from a bag to his nephew's wrist. Whoa, had his brother suddenly struck it rich? That watch on Leo's wrist was more expensive than his own. The conference was about to start, leaving no time to chat. Clay had walked in on his own, unescorted. At these things, everyone was a professor. You could throw a rock and hit 5 of them. He decided he would find Leo after the session. He went inside and found his seat near the back. The front rows were filled with the heavy hitters, the legends of the field. He wanted to go up and introduce himself, but didn't know any of them personally and didn't want to seem presumptuous. Outside, Leo's phone buzzed with a reply from Stella. She was busy too, studying Portuguese in a classroom. She sent him a picture of her textbook, which was completely unintelligible to him. Her voice message was softer and sweeter than when they spoke in person. Portuguese is so tricky, the pronunciation is really hard. Leo played it twice, imagining the cute little pout she must have made while complaining. He marveled at her work ethic. She had all the money in the world and was still studying this hard. It was no wonder the wealth gap was so hard to bridge. The rich could afford to focus purely on learning, while everyone else had to worry about survival first. He didn't want to distract her further. He looked at the time. He had hours to kill. The old Leo would have played games on his phone or snuck out to explore. But ever since he started managing his time with the system, every hour felt precious. Wasting it felt like a crime. Since he had the fluent English buff, he decided to make the most of it. He wanted to internalize the feeling of fluency so that some of it would stick after the buff wore off. He pulled out his Surface Pro, a gift from his Aunt Sky, put on his headphones, and started listening to a conversational English course he had saved. The tablet was perfect for it. He could listen, write notes on the screen, and save everything. He studied for an hour, amplified by the time dilation buff. As he was finishing up, he felt a trickle from his nose. He grabbed a tissue and wiped it away. A nosebleed. He'd literally overheated his brain. He noticed people starting to file out a side door. It was the mid-session break. Professor Reed emerged, chatting with a blonde woman. Leo stood up and walked over. Professor Reed had come out for a stretch. She couldn't sit for that long at her age. Leo remembered Alex's note about her diabetes. He knew that meant controlling blood sugar, eating small, frequent meals to avoid a crash. Professor, I brought some artisan dried fruit from my hometown. Would you like some? Professor Reed had invited him along on a whim, charmed by the earnest young man she saw on her morning run. She was surprised by how thoughtful he had been all day. It was clear he came from a good family, a bit green, but very diligent. She accepted the fruit and offered some to her companion, a visiting academic from Europe. The woman shook her head. My throat is a bit sore. I cannot have this. Leo immediately pulled out the pack of Ricola lozenges. He turned to her and said in clear English, these are for sore throats. They help with irritation and dryness. He explained the herbal ingredients on the box. The woman's face lit up. Vala, resnikno potribujum, she said in her native tongue before switching to English. Thank you, I really need it. She took one right away. Professor Reed took one as well. She introduced Leo as her student, and the woman praised him for being so thoughtful and handsome. After a short break, they headed back inside. Professor Reed was impressed. Leo's English was excellent, completely fluent. His math might be terrible, but his other skills were clearly not. The second half of the conference passed quickly. Leo sat on the sofa and studied his accounting textbook. When the hour was up, he'd get up and stretch. Finally, a low roar emanated from the hall. The conference was over. The main doors opened, and hundreds of professors flooded out. Professor Reed was at the front, walking with a few other senior academics and the blonde woman. His uncle was lost somewhere in the Sea of Tweed. Leo gathered his things and went to meet her. Leo, she said, seeing him approach. Come, we're going to dinner. There's a smaller seminar this evening, so we'll probably be staying the night. Can you go and check on the room arrangements? Just as she finished, Clay Foster finally squeezed his way out of the crowd. He saw his nephew talking with a legendary Professor Reed, who was smiling warmly at him. A far cry from the formidable woman who had, according to academic legend, once thrown a book at a presenter mid-speech. He had no idea the secret weapon behind that smile was the chrysanthemum tea his nephew had provided. Though he wasn't a natural social butterfly, Clay Foster knew a golden opportunity when he saw one. His nephew was standing right next to a giant in their field. Not approaching would be foolish. He navigated the crowd and walked up to introduce himself. Plenty of younger academics were trying to get a moment of Professor Reed's time, and she responded to all of them with polite, practiced courtesy. When Clay stepped up, she offered the same, though she had a flicker of recognition in her eyes. Clay briefly described his research on bearing friction coefficients. Excellent work, young man. A very promising field, she said graciously. Then, Clay played his trump card. Thank you, Professor. And thank you for bringing my nephew, Leo, to an event like this. It's a wonderful experience for him. Leo, seeing the familiar, slightly sheepish yet charming expression on his uncle's face, the one he always used right before getting someone else in trouble, instinctively mirrored it. He stood beside them, looking earnest and grateful. Professor Reed's eyes darted between the two of them. Oh, they really are alike. He's my uncle, Professor, Leo said dutifully. My dad's brother. Well, I'll be, she said, her smile becoming genuinely warm. No wonder you look familiar. Come, join us for dinner. And just like that, Clay Foster, who had come to the conference as a nobody, found himself sitting at the same dinner table as Professor Evelyn Reed, all thanks to his nephew. He was a little starstruck. Leo, who hadn't been sure if assistants were even allowed at the dinner, found a seat waiting for him, thanks to Professor Reed's VIP status. At the table, the conversation was a whirlwind of academic jargon that went right over his head. The only person he could somewhat understand was the blonde foreigner, who sprinkled in simple English phrases. The food, however, was incredible. With his enhanced palate buff, every flavor was a revelation. A cold ear mushroom salad was perfectly crisp and dressed. He used the serving chopsticks to place a portion on Professor Reed's plate. A cold noodle dish with sesame paste had a subtle, delightful kick of wasabi. He served her some of that, too. There was a braised pork knuckle that was fall-off-the-bone tender, but considering Professor Reed probably had dentures, he carefully carved off a few tender, fatty pieces for her. He tasted a Westlake beef soup that was just okay, but a corn and pork rib soup was light and flavorful. He ladled a bowl of that for her. While his uncle and the others were busy engaging Professor Reed in intellectual conversation, Leo was busy eating and curating the perfect meal for her. By the end of it, everyone was happy, except perhaps Clay, who had been so focused on schmoozing that he barely tasted his food. He watched his nephew, who was completely at ease, and felt a strange sense of the world turning upside down. He hadn't even eaten his fill, but he wasn't upset. He was just grateful to be there. And as they left the dining room, other professors, who had ignored him all day, were now nodding and greeting him. The academic pecking order was brutally clear. He was no longer an unknown junior professor. He was the professor who had dined with Evelyn Reed. Professor Reed herself had thoroughly enjoyed the meal. She usually disliked conference food, but tonight's had been exceptional. She realized that almost everything she had eaten was something Leo had picked for her. The few things she had tried on her own had been bland in comparison. At her age, she valued comfort and contentment above all else. She was known for her explosive temper. She never bottled things up, which was probably why, at 69, her health was still excellent. But with Leo, she felt nothing but a gentle calm. After dinner, she took her medication, which needed to be followed by a short walk. Leo excused himself to handle the room arrangements. Clay Foster, who normally would have been done for the day, had been invited to the exclusive evening seminar. It was an incredible opportunity to network with the true elites of his field. Back in his hotel room, his wife, Melinda, called. "We just finished dinner," he said. "There's another session tonight." I saw Leo. There was a surprised pause on the other end. "I thought you were going to see him tomorrow," Melinda said. She had a lukewarm opinion of her husband's family. His brother ran a small restaurant, and his sister-in-law struck her as a bit petty. She felt her husband carried too much guilt over his brother helping to pay for his college tuition. A restaurant can't be doing that badly, she often thought. She was constantly reining in Clay's desire to send the money. "How is Leo doing?" Melinda asked, her tone carefully neutral. "Ask him if he has enough spending money. If not, you can give him some. But make sure you tell his father, so the boy doesn't waste it and get into trouble." Clay knew his wife looked down on his family. He couldn't resist a small bit of showing off. "Leo is doing incredible things. I ran into him at the conference. He's working as an assistant for Professor Reed. Yes, the one your father always talks about. She absolutely adores him. I had dinner at her table tonight because of him, and I was invited to a much more exclusive seminar this evening, all because I was seen with her." There was a stunned silence. Melinda's father was also a professor. She knew exactly how big the gap was between a no-name academic and a legend like Evelyn Reed. Her tone shifted instantly. "Well, Leo always was such a good, promising boy. He must be a senior now, right? He'll have a lot of expenses. You absolutely should give him something as his uncle. I was going to buy him a new suit, but since I'm not there, you should just give him the money. Give him $5,000. Clay was taken aback. His wife, who managed their finances with an iron fist, was suddenly being generous. She would approve a $10,000 watch for him, but would lecture him for days if he gave his brother $200. The one time his brother had asked to borrow money, when Leo needed to switch schools after the factory closed, and they needed money for a down payment on a house in the right district, Melinda had refused. He'd had to give his brother the $20,000 he'd been hiding for years, a near impossible feat on a transparent professor's salary. Even without Melinda's prompting, he had planned to give Leo some cash. But now, with her approval of $5,000 plus the $2,000 he'd already set aside, he could give him a substantial amount. And seeing how mature and responsible Leo seemed now, he wasn't worried about it being wasted. He took a moment to rest and clear his head before the evening session. Meanwhile, Leo was at the front desk, feeling a little nervous. He'd never had to book a hotel room before. Luckily, the conference organizers had everything arranged. Professor Reed had a suite, and he, as her assistant, had his own room. It was an old-school five-star hotel, the kind that frequently hosted large events. Professor Reed's room was 701, and his was 703. He checked his room first. It was a spacious king room, bigger than 3 of his dorm rooms combined, with a huge bathroom that had a soaking tub. After dropping his bag, he went to check on 701. He expected it to be the same, but it was a full suite. A living room that could serve as a small conference room, a wet bar, and a separate bedroom. The bed, however, was incredibly soft, with fluffy feather pillows. He remembered Alex's warning. Older people often have back problems and can't sleep on soft mattresses. He used a phone on the nightstand to call the front desk. "Hi, I'm in room 701. I was wondering if you have any firmer pillows like buckwheat, and if the mattress can be made firmer." The front desk confirmed they could send up a buckwheat pillow and have housekeeping flip the mattress to its firmer side. Leo, feeling like he was finally getting the hang of this, took a deep breath. Being an assistant wasn't just about showing up. It was about anticipating these small, crucial details. He headed back toward the conference room. Just outside, Professor Reed was chatting with a small group, including his uncle, who was hovering at the edge. Leo walked up, and since he couldn't follow the academic talk, he struck up a conversation with the blonde woman from before, deciding to practice his English. The woman, who was happy to have a conversation partner, was a good sport. She told him her field was electrical engineering and that she was from Slovenia. She also proudly explained that she had chosen a Chinese name for herself, Li Gangtai, which translated to Li Steel because she admired the strength and resilience of steel. Leo had to stifle a laugh. They chatted easily about cultural differences, food, and travel. Leo, powered by his buff, felt his confidence soaring. He could do this. It was just like chatting with relatives at a family gathering. His uncle, Clay, watched from a few feet away, dumbfounded. He saw his nephew, fluent and charismatic, conversing with a foreign academic. A paranoid thought flashed through his mind. Is my sister-in-law having an affair? But no, the kid looked too much like him. He had to be a foster. He'd always dreamed of being that effortlessly bilingual, but his own spoken English was still stilted and awkward. The evening seminar began at 8. As a small group filed in, several of the professors who had been at the dinner shot glances at Leo, the young man with a magical chrysanthemum tea. The professor who'd nearly been hit by a book earlier in the day gave him a particularly pointed look. Leo, oblivious, spotted his uncle sitting in the back. He trotted over. "Uncle, do you want some chrysanthemum tea? I can make you a cup." Clay just stared at him. "No, thank you. I'm fine." The next morning, Leo woke up early. He drank a glass of warm water and went to the window. The hotel backed onto a river and a park, and 2 large white geese were already patrolling a lotus pond in the courtyard below. He snapped a picture and sent it to Stella. "It's overcast, but no rain yet. I'm going for a run outside. My roommate Sean said it might rain today, so if you go for a run, be careful." He added a cute bunny emoji. To his surprise, she replied almost instantly with a picture of her own. It was a close-up of her face in profile, clearly taken in bed. Her nose was perfect, and her hair was a beautiful mess. She was completely makeup-free. His heart skipped a beat. "Stella, I don't want to run if you're not here." She followed it with a bitmoji of a bunny tripping mid-stride. Leo felt like she had a camera on him. He was that silly, happy bunny, hopping along and then tumbling head over heels with a goofy grin on his face. Every message from her, no matter how simple, felt like a jolt of electricity. She never said she liked him, but every word was filled with it. He went downstairs for his run, a huge, goofy smile plastered on his face. In the hotel garden, he ran into Professor Reed, who was chatting with Professor Thorne. She was wearing another new outfit, a chic white tracksuit. She looked remarkably fresh for someone who had been in meetings until 11 the night before. Professor Thorne, on the other hand, who was 11 years her junior, looked exhausted. "The bed in this hotel is too soft," Thorne was complaining. "My back is killing me. If I wasn't worried about catching a cold, I'd have slept on the floor." Professor Reed, assistant in tow, chuckled. Her back wasn't great either, but she remembered her own room. "My bed was perfectly fine. I slept like a log." She saw Leo jogging toward them. "So disciplined," she murmured to Thorne. "He was studying in the lounge yesterday, too." She made a mental note. The boy had potential. If his uncle was a professor, he had the pedigree. He just needed some guidance. "Good morning, Professor Reed, Professor Thorne," Leo said, slowing to a stop. He received a notification that Professor Reed's favorability had just ticked up to 75. Thorne just grunted and continued complaining about the beds. Leo, ever the helpful assistant, chimed in. "Professor Thorne, you can call the front desk." They can provide a firm pillow and flip the mattress for you. I arranged it for Professor Reed last night. Did you sleep well, ma'am? Evelyn Reed flashed a perfect, toothy smile. Wonderfully. I always do. She was enjoying this little moment of one-upmanship with her old friend. They all went to breakfast together. The dining room was already buzzing with academics trying to get a final word in with Professor Reed. Leo couldn't even get close, so he went to get his own food. He wasn't a stranger to fancy hotel buffets, and without the need to socialize, he could focus on the mission, finding the best food. His uncle wasn't there yet, probably off networking. And Dr. Novak, whom he'd added on WhatsApp, her name on there was Alice, was likely sleeping in after indulging in a late-night dessert bar. Leo carefully sampled the breakfast offerings. The congee was terrible, but the red bean soup was decent. The star of the show, surprisingly, was a gourmet brisket slider. The bun was crisp, the meat was savory and perfectly seasoned. He put together a simple tray for Professor Reed. A small bowl of the red bean soup, no sugar, half a brisket slider, a side of sautéed cabbage, a yogurt. He remembered a traditional Chinese medicine tip about avoiding cold fruits in the morning. When the other professors saw Leo arrive with a tray, they took the hint and dispersed. Professor Thorne, still grumpy, eyed the food. Hotel food is never any good. You should have what I'm having, Marcus, Professor Reed said with a twinkle in her eye. Leo's family owns a restaurant. He has a gift for picking out the best dishes. Thorne looked skeptical. Let me get it for you, Professor, Leo said instantly. He didn't have Alex's intel on Thorne, but based on his accent and general demeanor, he guessed he liked heartier, more savory food. He prepared a similar plate, but added a dollop of chili crisp, a crispy potato pancake, and swapped the yogurt for a glass of cucumber juice. Thorne took a bite. His eyes widened. It was delicious. Everything was perfectly seasoned. Even the cucumber juice was refreshing. He ate everything, his mood visibly improving. This student of yours is quite something, Evelyn, he said, finally looking at Leo with real interest. Have you thought about graduate school, son? My university has an excellent program. You could even work with me, though my current students would handle your initial training. Leo was stunned. Grad school? At a top-tier university like Thorne's? It was beyond his wildest dreams. But he knew what to do in a moment like this. He excitedly pulled out his phone. Professor, could I get your contact information? He now had 5 professors in his contacts. The old saying was true. Network with successful people, because their friends are successful too. As Professor Thorne graciously added his contact, a notification popped up in Leo's mind. Congratulations, host. You have made progress with the gold-tier single male, Marcus Thorne. Favorability has reached 70. Please continue your efforts. Target, Marcus Thorne, 58, divorced. Net worth, $3. 72 million. Academic prowess, 85. Appearance, 70. Leo's mind reeled. His entire family's net worth, house included, was maybe $500,000. These people were on another level. Was academic research really that lucrative? He looked at Professor Thorne again, at the shiny, bald head that reflected the dining room lights, and thought, well, I guess it comes at a price. The morning was a blur of activity. Leo found a jar of honey in the conference hall's dining room and was quietly stirring it into a glass of hot water when his uncle, Clay Foster, rushed in, looking like he'd just been ambushed by an early morning meeting. Professor Reed had already finished her breakfast and left to catch up with a few old colleagues, so Leo had been waiting for him. It was almost 9:30 when Clay finally made it, well past the 8:00 to 9:00 m. breakfast rush. They found a table in the corner with a good view. Clay looked famished. You won't believe it, he said, piling a plate high with scrambled eggs, bacon, and sausage links. I get a call first thing this morning from my dean. He'd heard a rumor that Professor Reed threw flowers at someone during a session. He wanted all the gossip. What's going on over there? You guys handing out bouquets at your panels now? Of course, Clay couldn't just share gossip. The dean wasn't calling for the tea. Well, not entirely. As a junior professor, he was expected to report on his professional development, what he'd learned, and the important takeaways from the smaller breakout session he'd attended last night. The call ended with the dean offering some encouraging words and telling him to be more ambitious with his next project grant application. Clay felt like everything was finally clicking into place, and he was starving. Reporting to your boss, even informally, was mentally draining, but it was a necessary evil. If you didn't know how to play the game and manage up, you were doomed to grind yourself into dust. Leo watched his uncle heap food onto his plate and figured most of it would go to waste. Ever since he'd married Aunt Melinda, she'd gotten him used to a healthier, more refined diet. The greasy, generic hotel buffet food wasn't going to cut it. He quietly got up and made another pass at the buffet line. Sure enough, when he returned, Clay was just sipping lemon water, poking at the food on his plate. He claimed to be starving, but nothing was actually making it into his mouth. Leo slid the plate he'd prepared in front of his uncle. "Try these. They're actually decent." Clay looked down. The hotel breakfast was, as expected, tough to swallow. After enough business trips, you'd rather just go out for coffee. He picked up a piece of melon from the plate Leo had brought. Whoa, his nephew had a knack for this. The fruit was perfectly ripe, the oatmeal wasn't watery, and the pastries were fresh. It suddenly dawned on Clay why Professor Reed had barely served herself last night, eating only what Leo put on her plate. The kid had a golden touch. He knew how to pick the good stuff. Speaking of a golden touch, Clay's eyes landed on Leo's wrist. "So, what's the deal with the watch?" At first, he thought his brother, Leo's dad, must have hit a windfall, but that didn't seem likely. Ray Foster was an open book. If something good happened, he couldn't help but share it. Quietly striking it rich wasn't his style. Besides, he and his wife were practical parents, not the type to spoil their kid. They wouldn't struggle themselves just to buy their average student's son the best of everything. Leo was a good kid, no major flaws, but this was out of character. Leo had been waiting for this. The moment he'd seen his uncle's matching Rolex, he knew the question was coming. It was moments like this, a flicker of guilt, the feeling of wearing something far beyond his means, that kept most young people on the straight and narrow. "A girl from school gave it to me," Leo said, channeling a look of pure, innocent sincerity that would have made his uncle proud. Clay looked at his nephew and, for a second, saw himself as a college senior. No explanation was needed. He got it. He remembered when Melinda had pursued him, showering him with gifts he felt he didn't deserve. She'd been a bit fuller back then, a girl he hadn't even noticed at first. In that moment, the destinies of uncle and nephew seemed to align across time. Clay didn't say anything else. He just clapped a hand on Leo's shoulder, surprised by the solid muscle there. The little kid had grown into a young man. He downed the last, slightly bitter sip of his cucumber juice, then pulled out his phone. Gritting his teeth, he wired his nephew $1,000. $500 was from the budget Melinda had approved, and the other $500 was from his personal fund money. "Your aunt said to get you some new clothes," he said gruffly. "A guy's got to be confident. We don't have to feel second-rate to anyone." Leo's phone buzzed. He opened his banking app, and his eyes widened at the number of zeros. $1,000,000. His uncle had just sent him a fortune. But why? Was this Clay's conscience finally getting to him for all those times he'd let Leo take the fall when they got into trouble as kids? "I've got to go meet one of my old professors," Clay said, standing up. "My flight's this afternoon, so I won't have time to swing by your campus." He looked at his nephew, at the faint shadow of a mustache still on his upper lip, and decided against any more advice. He just squeezed his shoulder one last time and walked away. Some roads you have to walk yourself, Clay thought. "Kid, once you've walked it, maybe you'll understand your old uncle. I just hope you end up a little happier than I did." For a split second, Leo thought his uncle's retreating figure looked strangely melancholic. But the feeling vanished as Clay broke into a brisk walk, eagerly greeting a half-bald older man near the exit. "Professor Lou." It was just an illusion. The sadness lasted all of a second. Back in his room, Leo packed his bag and called his mom. "Hey, I ran into Uncle Clay. He's here for the conference, too. I'm here as Professor Reed's assistant." "Well, look at our Leo, moving up in the world," his mom laughed on the other end. "What did the professor see in you, huh? That you're good at carrying bags." Leo winced. Every time she called him Leo, it sounded like he was 8 years old. "Mom, I'm actually good at this stuff, you know. Is it so weird that a professor would notice?" "I'm just kidding. So what's the real story?" "Okay, for real, I saw Uncle Clay, and he gave me $1,000. Told me to study hard." For a fleeting moment, Leo considered lowballing the number, but the thought passed. He was a good son. 8,000? He must have robbed a bank, she said, surprised. "Your aunt keeps him on a tight leash. He doesn't have that kind of cash lying around." "What did you do to him?" He could hear her calling his dad over. A moment later, his dad's voice came on the line. "Is your uncle okay? Did he and Melinda have a fight?" Ray Foster asked, a note of concern in his voice. "No, everything's fine. He said the money was from Aunt Melinda for clothes." He could hear his parents murmuring in the background, trying to figure it out. His mom got back on the phone. "Well, okay then. We just wanted to check. Don't go spending it all in one place. And call us if you need anything." After hanging up, Leo finished packing his single bag and was ready to go. He felt a pang of regret leaving the hotel room. The sign at the front desk said it was $1,200 a night. He hadn't done anything but sleep. It felt like he'd just thrown away $200. Still, after reporting the income to his parents, his net worth had officially increased. Leo Foster's net worth, plus $1, He slung his bag over his shoulder and went to find Professor Reed. Meanwhile, after his meeting with the academic bigwig, Clay got a call from his brother. Ray asked if everything was okay at home and why he'd given Leo so much money. Clay, touched by his brother's concern, sold his nephew out immediately. I think Leo's seeing someone. Looks like the girl's family has money. I was worried he'd feel insecure, so I gave him a little extra spending cash. And Melinda and I are great, no fights. After hanging up, Clay checked his secret savings account. Fun money, $500. The more he thought about it, the more it stung. How'd he gotten so carried away? He'd seen his nephew's earnest face, had a weird moment of weakness, and poof, $1,000 was gone. It had taken him ages to save that up. 500 would have been plenty. He thumped his chest in frustration. Just then, his wife called. He answered with a dramatic sigh. What's wrong? Melinda asked. Did you give Leo the money? I did, honey. And, look, don't be mad. I was talking with him this morning. It seems like Professor Reed is thinking about taking him on as a grad student, but the kid is being foolish, talking about getting a job instead. I laid into him, and in the heat of the moment, I sent him $1,500. I told him not to worry about anything and just focus on getting into a program. People would kill for that opportunity, and he doesn't even appreciate it. Are you upset? I know I acted on my own, but it's such a rare chance. Of course not, Melinda said immediately. That's wonderful news. He should absolutely go to grad school. What kind of job can you get with just a bachelor's degree these days? Tell him you'll cover his living expenses if you have to. Don't worry about it. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I should have talked to you first. I was just about to call you when Ray called me. Leo must have told him, asking why I sent so much. As soon as I hung up with him, your call came through. Melinda's line had been busy. She'd been trying to call him to ask the same thing. It's fine, she said, her voice warm. As long as Leo doesn't waste it. He did the right thing by telling his parents. I love you, honey. My flight's this afternoon. I'll see you tonight. You're so cheesy. Save it for when you get home. After she hung up, Clay patted his chest, a wave of relief washing over him. He'd recouped the $500 from his secret stash and gotten his wife to approve another $1,000. Huh. Fun money. Plus $500. Standing outside Professor Reed's room, number 701, Leo suddenly felt his ears itch intensely, a strange tingling sensation, as if his brain were trying to escape through them. The sky opened up, and a heavy rain began to fall. As Clay's car pulled away toward the airport, Leo stood with Professor Reed, seeing off Professor Thorne and Dr. Novak as they boarded the shuttle bus. He waved goodbye to his uncle, watching the bus disappear into the downpour. Professor Reed noticed the glint of a Rolex on Leo's wrist as he waved, and then saw a matching one on his uncle's arm as Clay waved back from the bus window. An interesting pair, those two. You and your uncle seem close, she remarked. Leo nodded. Best friends. We used to get into trouble together when I was a kid. He was the lookout, and I was the one who got grounded. A true role model. Professor Reed laughed, a genuine, hearty sound. Her own life, filled with academic success and a sprawling family legacy, had ultimately left her feeling quite solitary. Her children were successful, off conquering the world on their own. Family was something you took for granted until it was gone, and then you couldn't buy it back for any price. At her age, she cherished these small moments of genuine connection. The conference organizers had gifted Professor Reed a slew of items. A blue and white porcelain tea set, a tin of pu'er tea, a branded travel mug, and a box of black goji berries. Each came in an enormous, heavy gift box. Leo called their driver, Walt, then gathered the boxes, carrying two in each hand as he walked with Professor Reed to the hotel entrance. This was when an athletic buff would have really come in handy, but he managed to carry everything without looking clumsy. Professor Reed was impressed. Leo looked lean, but he was surprisingly strong. The boy has potential, she thought. Leo stowed the gifts in the trunk. Walt, their driver, was much friendlier this time, treating them both with warmth. As they drove, the rain intensified. Walt, please take it slow, Professor Reed cautioned. Safety first. She'd done so much talking over the past day that she leaned back and closed her eyes, resting for the remainder of the drive. When they arrived back at Northwood State, the oversized umbrella Jordan had insisted Leo bring finally proved its worth. Leo managed to carry all 4 boxes in his left hand while holding the umbrella steady over Professor Reed with his right. They walked together into Building C, the faculty housing complex. Professor Reed lived on the 5th floor. Stepping inside her apartment was like entering another world. It was immaculate. The first thing you saw was a massive, floor-to-ceiling bookshelf that dominated one wall. By the window, a raised tatami mat area served as a tea space, complete with another cabinet filled with an exquisite collection of teapots, cups, and saucers that all looked incredibly expensive. The living room was huge, clearly converted from a two-bedroom into a spacious one-bedroom, with a dedicated reading nook opposite the tea space. The whole place had the clean, elegant lines of modern Asian design, obviously professionally done. Leo set the boxes down and, not wanting to intrude, prepared to leave. "You should get some rest, Professor. I'll head back now. Just let me know if you need anything." Back in her own space, Professor Reed let out a sigh of relief. There was no place like home. As much as she enjoyed the work, traveling at her age was exhausting. This trip had been smoother than most. However, if her usual assistant, Heather, had come, she wouldn't have felt comfortable letting a young woman carry so many heavy things. And Walt, the driver, was always a bit too hasty. Usually, she ended up carrying something herself. This time, Leo had handled everything effortlessly. A male assistant certainly had its advantages. He'd been thoughtful, too, remembering to bring an umbrella. The last thing she needed was to catch a cold from the wind and rain. Living alone, she dreaded getting sick. Even a common cold could feel like a near-death experience. All in all, she was thoroughly pleased. And the chrysanthemum tea and Ricola lozenges Leo had prepared for her had been a lifesaver for her throat. That tea must have been expensive, she mused. The boy probably comes from a good family. "All right, Leo," she said with a warm smile. "I'll call you if I need anything." As he was placing the gift boxes in a corner, she suddenly remembered something. "Oh, could you give me a hand with this?" A shelf in her bookcase had come loose and was sagging, trapping some books. It was a simple fix. Leo took the books down, repositioned the shelf, and gave it a firm tap until it clicked back into place. He pushed on it to make sure it was secure, then neatly replaced the books. Leo, the humble NPC, has completed a new quest for a high-level player. As he was about to leave, Professor Reed asked if his parents enjoyed tea. He remembered his mom liked floral teas and told her so. She handed him 2 tins from one of the gift boxes. "Give these to your mother. They're quite nice." Then she asked if he wanted one of the travel mugs. Leo thought of Sean's beat-up old thermos, the paint chipped and peeling. He was half convinced the inside was leaching poison. He nodded politely. "Professor, would it be okay if I gave the mug to my roommate?" Professor Reed opened a cabinet by the door, revealing a small mountain of conference swag mugs. "You all seem to get along well," she commented. Leo thought for a moment, then answered honestly, "Actually, I'm usually pretty forgetful. One of my roommates reminded me it might rain, which is why I brought an umbrella, and the one I have is old. Another roommate gave me his new one." He didn't mention the tea or the lozenges from Alex, since that involved prying into her personal life, and Alex had specifically told him to delete their chat history. She smiled and handed him 4 mugs. "You're all good, kids. Here, one for each of you." "Thank you, Professor." As he said it, the system chimed in his head. Professor Reed's favorability toward him had increased by 1 point, bringing the total to 76. Young people are supposed to be a bit careless, she thought. They haven't been beaten down by the world yet. They see endless opportunities, so they don't sweat the small stuff. But the fact that his roommates look out for him, that they help him, that says a lot about his character. He builds good relationships. That's a rare quality. Leo left her apartment with 4 new travel mugs and 2 tins of tea. Professor Reed had said the tea was for his mom. The label read Oriental Beauty. Having no idea what it was, he snapped a picture and looked it up on Amazon. His jaw dropped. Oriental Beauty, award-winning Shinshu oolong tea. First prize. 5. 3 ounces, $1.80. $180 for 1 tin? That meant he was holding $360 worth of tea. His mom's usual brand was $12 a pound, and she already complained it was too expensive, saying it used to be $5. Curious, he searched for the brand of chrysanthemum tea Alex had told him to grab. The box had been beautiful. The first result was a cheap knockoff, but the third link looked identical. The price, $120 for a box of 12 buds. $10 of flour. Leo thought his Amazon app was broken. Had it decided he was rich and started showing him ridiculously inflated prices just for fun? He couldn't believe the tea was that expensive. Alex had told him to just grab some, so he'd casually taken 4 packs, figuring each bud was maybe $1 or $2. He planned to treat Alex to a nice dinner to pay him back. He knew Alex would never accept cash. The guy had a strict sense of propriety about things like that. The security guard, Mr. Roberts, wasn't at his post in the faculty housing lobby, probably having gone home to bring in his laundry because of the rain. When Leo got back to his dorm, a wave of relief washed over him. The familiar bunk beds, the comfortable mess, it was home. All he wanted to do was collapse onto his own bed. No matter how big or luxurious a hotel room was, it never felt right. Seeing Sean, unshaven and lounging in his boxers. Leo felt an almost overwhelming urge to hug him. God, being out in the real world, using his brain so much was exhausting. It made you feel so small. Back in the dorm with his roommates, his mind could finally switch off and just rest. Sean's face lit up when he saw him. Leo, you're back. They didn't do room checks last night. You eaten yet? Not yet. Leo flopped onto his bed. He briefly wondered what Professor Reed was having for lunch, then immediately shut the thought down. Stop. You're not her butler. I'll go grab you something from the cafeteria, Sean offered. If I go now, they should still have those eggplant patties you like. Leo lifted his head from his pillow, his voice full of gratitude. Sean, you're a lifesaver. After a couple of meals on the outside, even the campus cafeteria food started to look appealing. Sean came back with eggplant patties, thin slices of eggplant stuffed with minced pork, battered, and deep-fried. It was one of the few things the cafeteria did well, a greasy, heavy dish perfect for a young guy's metabolism. Just as they were finishing, Alex strolled in. Jordan was still out of town, not expected back until that evening. Having been on his mini-adventure, Leo was buzzing with a desire to share. Even though he'd just been carrying bags for Professor Reed, the conference felt like a completely different universe from campus life. School was simple. The real world was complicated. Just playing the part of a junior assistant for a day had left him feeling mentally drained. Alex had come back to check on Leo, half expecting him to return with a new, insufferable ego. He'd seen it happen before with guys in the student government. They'd tag along with a professor for a few trips and come back talking like they were tenured faculty. He tossed an orange to Leo and another to Sean, then sat down to slowly peel one for himself. Leo pulled out the travel mugs Professor Reed had given him. He handed one to Sean, one to Alex, placed a third on Jordan's desk, and kept the last one. Alex saw the mug and grinned. Well, look at you, Leo, getting gifts from Professor Reed. You must have really impressed her. The mugs were standard conference swag. Not ridiculously expensive, but definitely a step up from Sean's dented old thermos. Worried Sean would be too sentimental to throw the old one away, Leo spoke up. The professor asked if I wanted a mug, and I told her I wanted to get some for my roommates, he explained. So she gave me 4. Sean, this one was for you from the start. Seriously, throw that old thing out. I can't look at it anymore. Alex shot Leo a surprised look. Damn, the kid knows how to play the game. Was he always this sharp, or was this a new development? It was a masterful move. If a boss gives you a gift, it's just payment for a job done, evening the score. But if you ask for something for your friends, it shows you're loyal and selfless. Not only does the boss appreciate your character, but they're more likely to call on you again, and you can accept future gifts with a clear conscience. Seeing Sean's hesitation, Alex chimed in. He's right, man. You can't use something that old. The lining is probably carcinogenic. His family received tons of corporate gifts like this, but Sean was a proud guy. He was more open with Leo, but with Alex and Jordan, he kept a certain distance. It was one of Leo's strengths, actually. He had a knack for getting along with people. All 3 of them were probably closer to Leo than they were to each other. Alex knew how to work a room and handle casual acquaintances, but when it came to deep friendships, Leo had him beat. Hearing them both say it, Sean reluctantly tossed his old thermos into the trash. He'd been thinking of giving it to his dad, whose own was even older and didn't keep anything warm anymore. But he'd been grinding away at his TikTok channel lately and felt like he was finally getting the hang of it. He was confident he'd be able to buy his dad a brand new one soon. This one was a gift from Leo. He'd use it himself. Leo then took one of the tea tins and handed it to Alex. Alex, this is for you. I used your Ricola and took 4 packs of that chrysanthemum tea. Use 2 of them. Alex's family dealt with high-end gifts all the time, so he recognized the label immediately. This wasn't just any tea. Competition grade meant it was the real deal. Every year, Shinshu in Taiwan held competitions for its famous Oriental Beauty Oolong, and this was an original tin. It seemed Leo had truly won Professor Reed over. The travel mugs were one thing. They handed those out to everyone. But this tea was special. Alex couldn't resist showing off a little. This Oriental Beauty stuff is crazy expensive. It's made from leaves that have been bitten by a specific insect, the green leafhopper. It's basically the Kopi Luwak of the tea world. The process gives it a unique aroma. It's especially popular with women. Leo had no idea it was so elaborate. Sean was equally baffled. Tea made from bug-bitten leaves was more expensive? His family's fields were full of bug-bitten leaves. Well, that's perfect, Leo said. Professor Reed said it was for my mom. She gave me 2 tins, so one for your family and one for mine. It felt right. He owed Alex a big one, and Alex was always so generous. He probably went through stuff like that expensive tea all the time without a second thought. Alex started to refuse, but then stopped. You know what? That's great. My mom actually loves oolong. I'll take it. I have to go ship something anyway. Give me your mom's address, and I'll send yours out for you. Leo was thrilled. Sean, meanwhile, couldn't wrap his head around why tea would be so expensive. If he ever brought home something like that, his parents would lecture him for a week. They grew and processed their own tea back home. It was a bit astringent, but it had a sweet aftertaste and kept you alert. He was more interested in his new travel mug. It was silver, and the lid had a digital temperature display. Alex had a black one, Jordan's was pink, and Leo's was white. It was a neat little upgrade. True to his word, Alex grabbed the tea and headed out, skipping his usual afternoon nap. Leo, however, was a creature of habit and felt the need to rest. Once they were alone, Leo explained to Sean, Alex told me to grab his tea and lozenges. I had no idea that chrysanthemum stuff was so expensive, $10 a pop. You know, Alex, he'd never let me pay him back, so I gave him one of the tins of tea. Sean had never heard of tea being sold by the flower, let alone for that price. The world of the rich and powerful felt a million miles away. But he understood. It was always better to not be in anyone's debt. Favors were the hardest things to repay. Leo climbed into his bunk for a nap and was out in minutes. He woke up half an hour later, splashed some water on his face in the communal bathroom, and took a moment to reflect. He noticed a pattern with the system. When he set a time block for a specific task, like take care of the professor during the 1-hour drive, he'd get a small reward if he successfully completed it. But if he set a block for study with the professor, and then just slept in the car, he got nothing. He was realizing that without external pressure, pure self-discipline was incredibly difficult. It was easy to get lazy, but having control over his time, feeling its importance, was making him more efficient and confident. He decided to study for an hour. Grabbing his backpack, he headed to a classroom building. On the way, he called his mom again to let her know a package was on its way. He told her it was very expensive tea from his professor, a gift specifically for her. On the other end of the line, his mom, Tammy, was a little taken aback. Was her Leo really growing up, sending gifts home to his mother? His father, Ray, listening in, had another theory. Maybe the tea wasn't from a professor at all, but from a girl who had a crush on him, just like his uncle back in the day. After shipping the packages, Alex Young also called his mother. Oriental Beauty? From your roommate? Was it that Jordan Davis kid? What did you do for him? No, Mom, it was Leo Foster. He was a temporary assistant for Professor Reed. You know, the retired one from Tsinghua who teaches here now. I gave him some information about her, and he was grateful. He gave me a travel mug and a tin of tea. All the roommates got mugs, but the tea was just for me. The professor gave it all to him. I think she really likes him. Well, you thank him for me. I'll send something for your dorm later. This is what I've always told you, Alex. Never underestimate anyone. Everyone has their own unique strengths. Relationships are important. If you treat people with sincerity, you'll earn their friendship. I know, Mom. Just take care of yourself. And stop giving Dad the silent treatment. You just make yourself sick. Don't you worry about your father and me. I know what I'm doing. It won't affect you. Alex hung up. As a couple walked past, holding hands, he felt a sudden pang of maturity. He was no longer just Alex. He was Mr. Young, shouldering responsibilities, navigating a world far more complex than this campus. Leo found an empty classroom, the same one where he'd seen a couple of grad students studying before. He claimed a corner, creating a triangular formation with the other two occupants, each person absorbed in their own world. The rain had stopped, leaving the air cool and fresh. He pushed open a window, letting in the damp scent of wet earth and green leaves, accompanied by the cheerful chirping of birds. He pulled out his information management textbook. He was an information management major, but the book was so pristine it looked like it had just been handed out. He'd probably never even read it through once. He set a time block in the system, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. Study information management. He sat down, opened the book, and felt like he was forgetting something. Right. He snapped a picture of his desk, then another of the view outside his window. From this angle, he could just see the top of the kissing tree, its leaves still glistening with rain. He sent the pictures to Stella. Back on campus, he added a sticker of a rabbit sitting obediently at a desk. She didn't reply immediately. Leo stared at his phone for a moment, wondering what she was doing. But the timer flashing at the top of his vision reminded him to get to work. He put his phone down and began to read, taking notes on the Surface Pro his aunt had given him. It was much easier than using notebooks, which he always ended up losing. Sitting in the quiet classroom, a sense of calm settled over him. It was a world away from the pressures of the conference. There, even among a crowd of esteemed professors, the social hierarchy was palpable. His uncle was a promising young academic, but still largely ignored. Then there were the older, washed-up professors who'd barely scraped by to get tenure, and now just floated along, seemingly there only for the freebies. At the top were people like Professor Thorne, in the prime of his career with a string of successful projects, surrounded by admirers. And then there was Professor Reed, a living legend whose seniority and status commanded universal respect. He thought becoming a professor was the pinnacle of success, but even among them, there were clear, brutal divisions. It was intimidating. He needed to stay grounded, to fill his empty head with knowledge before he got too carried away. At his current level, he'd be lucky to even get a chance to carry someone's bag again. With his newly boosted intelligence stat, he dove into the material, finding it easier than ever to grasp the concepts. His memory wasn't buffed, so he still had to write things down to retain them, but understanding came first. Intelligence was the foundation. Memory was just a tool. With a higher IQ, learning was easy, which made memorizing a breeze. Leo felt a thrill as he put his new brain to work. With the time dilation buff active, he lost himself in his studies. After some time, a sweet, fruity scent of lychee broke his concentration. He looked up to see Stella. She was wearing a long white sundress, her short black hair held back by a sparkling clip. On her feet were a pair of edgy black flat sandals with silver studs. The same style of dress that made Paige Kennedy look cute and girl next doorish transformed Stella into someone cool and effortlessly chic. The delicate clip in her hair was a perfect contrast to her bold style, and when she smiled, Leo felt a rush of sweetness, as if he'd just eaten a perfectly ripe lychee. His heart started a race. Definitely need to buy some Coke 10. This can't be good for my long-term health. How did you find me? He asked. I saw the picture you sent. The tree. I figured out the angle and guessed it had to be this building, probably the 3rd floor. Looks like I was right. Leo was speechless. He had to admit, her IQ was probably higher than his. Mind if I study with you? She asked. Leo's brain short-circuited. Study? Can we actually study together? Won't this seriously hinder my academic progress? He scooted over, making room. Stella sat down on the outside of the desk. There was no way this was going to work. When he shifted his arm, it brushed against hers. In the summer heat, both of them in sleeveless tops, the bare skin-on-skin contact sent a jolt through him, a strange electric current that spread through his entire body. It was like his arm had taken a shot of whiskey, warm and tingling. The visual contrast was stark, his slightly tanned skin against her delicate, snow-white arm. It was enough to make his heart flutter erratically. After it happened a second time, Leo shifted further inward, creating a small gap between them. Focus on studying, he told himself. Stella had brought a Portuguese textbook and was listening to audio lessons through her earbuds. But she felt the contact too. The first touch had been warm. The second had lingered a little longer, their arms resting side by side, and she felt a blush creep up her neck. Her mind was a mess. Is he doing this on purpose? He's kind of jerk. She braced for another accidental touch, but when she glanced over, he had retreated to the far corner of the desk, pressed up against the window, as if he could phase through the wall. He was even more nervous than she was. She watched him. His back was straight, his hair neatly trimmed. He wore no jewelry, save for the watch on his wrist. His face was clean-cut, his eyelashes long as he focused intently on his textbook, taking notes. He was so constrained, writing with one arm practically pinned against the wall. He looked so well-behaved. It made her want to mess with him. Stella casually shifted an inch closer. Their arms touched again. Leo was fairly light-skinned for a guy, but next to Stella, he looked several shades darker. Every time he turned a page, their arms would brush. His mind was a tangled mess. How did other couples manage to study together? It was impossible. He was pretending to take notes, but he was just mindlessly copying from the textbook, even mixing up paragraphs. He glanced at Stella. She seemed completely absorbed in her Portuguese lesson, earbuds in, seemingly oblivious. Emboldened by her apparent lack of reaction, he made his move. He reached over, his arm covering hers, his hand gently pressing down on top of hers. A girl's hand was so small, so cool and soft. A continuous, tingling warmth spread from his palm through his entire body. He felt a mix of exhilaration and confusion. Studying was officially off the table. He leaned in and whispered, "Hey, you see that big tree down there? Let's go check it out. It's nice and cool under it." The campus air was warm and gentle. Stella felt that if they stayed in the classroom any longer, the atmosphere would become far too charged. There were other students around, and even though they seemed focused on their own work, this just felt wrong. They were being a distraction. She packed her things first and stood up. Leo quickly threw his book and tablet into his backpack and followed. He wanted to take her hand, but she was already striding toward the door. For some reason, the courage he'd felt sitting next to her vanished the moment they were standing. He reached out, but missed. He felt like he wasn't tall enough. Stella was wearing flats, but standing next to her, he still felt a little short. As they stepped out of the classroom, the two other students inside let out a simultaneous sigh of relief, followed by a shared, silent thought. Player. They remembered the guy from before. The girl he was within had also worn a sundress, but it was colorful, not white. She had long hair, wore floral flip-flops, had a rounder face, and smelled like roses. This new girl was completely different. Short hair, a sleek white dress, and those killer-studded sandals that snaked up her calves, a style that would look disastrous on anyone with less than perfect legs, but on her was pure, edgy perfection. The first girl had been shorter than him. This one was taller, player, and then, as he'd reached for her hand, they'd caught the glint of the Rolex on his wrist. A rich player. The injustice was infuriating. It was a double blow. They both hunched back over their books. Vestiges study. Education was the only way to change their fate. Outside, the classroom fell silent, but the ambient stats in the room had shifted. Anger, plus 20. Diligence, plus 50. Envy, plus 20. As they started down the stairs, walking side by side, Leo seized his chance. He confidently reached out and took her hand. Stairways were dangerous, after all. He had to keep her safe. Money was courage, and with a fresh $1,000 in his account, Leo felt bolder than if he'd chugged a courage-enhancing potion. He felt like he could take on the world. He intertwined his fingers with hers, swinging their arms gently as they walked. Hand-holding was a normal thing. He'd held hand with girls before in games as a kid. It was nothing, but holding Stella's hand was different. It felt like his entire arm was drunk. The gentle swing, the warmth radiating from her palm. He could have walked down those stairs forever. He wished the 3 flights were 30 or 300. He could walk 1,000 miles holding her hand like this. The stairwell was deserted. They descended 1 flight, turned at the landing, and started down the next, his heart blooming with a pure, simple joy. As they neared the first floor, they saw someone coming up. The staircase was narrow. For 3 people to pass, 2 would have to squeeze to one side. Leo was against the wall, Stella on the outside. To let the other student pass, she had to press herself tightly against Leo, creating space. The student walked by, face carefully neutral, eyes fixed straight ahead. Leo found himself pinned against the wall. Stella, looking up, realized she was in a classic cabinet pose, her body trapping his. The image of him singing to her at night flashed through her mind. The feeling of his voice right by her ear, so close she could feel his breath, making the fine hairs on her skin stand on end. Leo's heart hammered even faster than when he'd first taken her hand. He was glad he couldn't walk through walls, or he would have nervously phased right through the concrete and run away. He was trapped. Stella was so close, face to face, her body pressed against his. He could smell the faint, sweet scent of her hair. Stella, he breathed. No, she replied instantly. Leo blinked. Huh. The moment the word left her lips, Stella's earlobes turned a deep crimson. What is wrong with my brain? He was just saying her name. What did she think he was about to do? Leo, however, understood immediately. A guy might get scared off by a girl who was too forward, but a shy girl. That triggered a different instinct entirely. He released her hand. For a split second, she looked disappointed. Then, he wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her into a tight embrace. He was leaning against the wall. She was leaning against him. In that moment, the world outside fell away. He was blind to anyone who might pass by. All he could see was the girl in front of him. Her glistening eyes, her delicate nose, her rosy lips, the sparkling clip in her hair, and the crimson blush of her earlobes. Stella squeezed her eyes shut, her body tense with anticipation. But Leo didn't kiss her lips. His gaze was fixed on her earlobe. She didn't blush, but her ears gave her away. He leaned in close, opened his mouth, and gently, teasingly, nipped her earlobe. It wasn't really a bite, more of a soft touch with his lips. A shiver ran through her. She pushed him away hard. You're a pervert. Then she turned and ran. She fled down the hall, her heart pounding like a drum. Jerk. All guys are jerks. She thought he was going to kiss her. A real kiss. She hadn't expected him to skip her lips entirely and go for her ear. It was just like the strange dream she'd been having, where he would sing in her ear, his breath making her tremble, and then he would kiss her earlobe, nibbling gently. It was like a dream playing out in real life. Pervert. Stella's mind, usually so controlled, was in absolute chaos. She thought she just liked his voice, that he was a decent guy, better than most. She had even steeled herself for a kiss, a simple touching of lips like holding hands. How had it turned into this? The campus air was warm and gentle. Stella's thoughts were a tangled storm. Leo remained leaning against the wall, not chasing after her. He'd been half expecting a slap. That's how it always went in the movies. But she hadn't hit him. She had just bitten her lip, her earlobe a shade of crimson that seemed to burn, and called him a pervert. And in that moment, he thought pervert was the most beautiful compliment he'd ever received. He wanted to hear it again. He'd only gotten her left ear. Her right one was still untouched. And her lips. He watched her biting her own lip and thought, don't bite so hard. You'll break the skin. Let me. I could do it for you. I'll be gentle. Really. She ran. He didn't follow. Leo walked over to the large tree by the side of the academic building. He angled his phone up, capturing a picture of its sprawling canopy. Bits of sunlight filtered through the leaves, twinkling like hidden stars. He sent the photo to Stella. I want to see the tree for you. It's lonely now that you're gone. The romance of the moment lasted less than a second. His phone rang. It was the registrar's office. They needed him to come by. A jolt of anxiety shot through him. What had he done wrong? Why was he on their radar? Did they know he was pursuing a girl? Were there cameras in the stairwell? No, that couldn't be it. People made out in the bushes all the time. Leo, the model student, nervously made his way to the administrative building. He was informed that he was there to collect his pay, a stipend for his work as a temporary assistant, plus a travel per diem and a summer heat bonus. It was the first time Leo had ever seen a paycheck broken down like that. He'd earned a grand total of $250 for the trip. It was a fortune. If he didn't already have $1,000 from his uncle cushioning his bank account, he would have jumped for joy. This was incredible. It was such easy money. Wait, if I'm getting paid an ongoing stipend. He dazedly signed the paperwork. The staff member was a young woman who looked to be not much older than him. When he'd heard registrar's office on the phone, he'd been terrified. He didn't know why he, a perfectly law-abiding citizen, had such an innate fear of authority. It was like a primal instinct. But the person in front of him looked like she had just graduated college herself. She had the same look he probably had when he was playing assistant, trying to act mature, but with a transparent layer of inexperience. He was right. Hannah Huang had graduated from a top-tier university only to land this glorified data entry job at a mediocre state school. She was still learning the ropes. Today, her boss had given her a strange task. Notify a senior student to come pick up his payment for being Professor Reed's temporary assistant. She didn't understand the backstory, but after a few rough weeks in the professional world, she had learned a few basic rules for surviving the office job horror game. Rule number 1, never ask your boss why. Questioning them lowers their opinion of you by 1 point, raises their anxiety by 1 point, and increases the difficulty of getting a promotion by 10. They probably won't tell you anyway, and will just get annoyed. Rule number 2, be respectful to everyone. You never know if you're talking to a low-level grunt or a hidden final boss. Rule number 3, rules still under development. She was determined to beat this game. She had to. If she didn't pass her 3-month probationary period, she'd be fired. If she made it, she'd unlock the next level, official employee. Leo, Hannah said patiently, if you leave your bank information, we can set up direct deposit for you in the future. You won't have to come in and sign every time. This is just for the first payment. She mentally high-fived herself for not calling him sir. This job was tough. A senior getting to be Professor Reed's assistant was unheard of. The last assistant, Heather, had supposedly gotten the job because her husband was a dean in the business school. Her boss had simply said Leo was personally requested by Professor Reed. Okay, thank you, Ms. Huang, Leo said, nodding politely. He'd seen the intern, Hannah Huang nameplate on her desk, and defaulted to a respectful title. After the conference, where shouting professor would get 100 heads to turn, he'd learned the value of using last names. The young professional, who still felt unworthy of the title Ms., felt a small, unexpected thrill of pleasure at being addressed so seriously. Your temporary assistant stipend starts today, Hannah continued. You won't get a travel per diem for on-campus work, but the summer heat bonus still applies. Oh, and here, she handed him a key card. This will get you into the faculty office suite. She then led him to Professor Reed's office, a place Leo had been before, and had seen her soaking her dentures. Outside the main office was a small cubicle. This was Heather Way's desk. She's on long-term leave due to severe morning sickness. You can work here if you need to. Leo saw a tidy desk with just a computer and a vase of lucky bamboo. A nameplate read Heather Way. He couldn't imagine himself, a mere student, sitting here surrounded by faculty. It felt like being a lamb in a den of wolves. Then he turned and saw the nameplate on the adjacent desk. Laura Miller. The chair was draped with a colorful scarf. Instead of bamboo, her desk was covered in tiny pots of daisies and succulents, surrounding a neat stack of files and a personal teapot. It was cluttered but organized, perfectly reflecting her personality. Ms. Huang, I probably won't need to use this space, Leo said graciously. but I'll come by if Professor Reed needs me. Thank you for the tour. He felt a sense of camaraderie with her. They were both just grunts trying to make it in the world. Hannah returned to her desk, having completed her task. Kids these days have such high EQ, she thought. And they're so rich. Did you see that two-tone Rolex? With that money and emotional intelligence. How could he not succeed? No wonder she was stuck doing grunt work while he, still a student, was already a professor's assistant. From here, he could easily slide into a graduate program under Professor Reed, leveraging her connections to build a network across the country, maybe even into government. She shuddered. Thank goodness for rule #2. She dodged a bullet. Time to get back to the grind. Leo, the pseudo-NPC. Cash assets, plus 250. Asterisk operator, asterisk operator, asterisk operator, asterisk operator, future daily income. On workdays, plus 250. Future daily income. On workdays, plus 250. Asterisk operator, asterisk operator, asterisk operator, asterisk operator, future daily income. On workdays, plus 65. $50 stipend, plus $15 summer bonus. New item. Faculty office key card. Current quest. Continue posing as a clueless senior. Leo checked his phone. No reply from Stella. He glanced at the time. It was almost time to walk Moose. He set a new time block. Pet care. Just then, the system's mechanical voice chimed in his head. Host has demonstrated admirable focus on studies despite external distractions. Although resistance ultimately failed, the effort is commendable. Reward. Plus 1 millimeter. Applicable to any body part. Leo, now standing a proud 5'8". 3 foot, checked his phone again. Still nothing from Stella. Crap. Did I really piss her off for good? Is she never going to talk to me again? Then the system chimed again. Congratulations, host. Significant progress has been made with Platinum Tier Target Stella Vance. Favorability has reached 81. Please continue your efforts and climb to new heights. Friendly reminder. Reaching favorability 90 will unlock new functions. Leo stared blankly into space. She called me a pervert, and her favorability went up? Who's the real pervert here? The dorm group chat blew up when Jordan got back. He announced they were all going out to dinner tonight. Apparently, he'd been mercilessly roasted by his dad and older brother at home and was in desperate need of consolation. Leo typed, "My treat tonight." Their group had an unspoken rule for eating out. Everyone took turns paying, but Sean, the oldest, was usually skipped once in the rotation. Alex and Jordan were always quick to grab the check. This time, Leo insisted. He screenshot his payment receipt from the registrar, boasting that after all these years of paying tuition, the university was finally paying him back. They agreed to meet at 6 on the Strip. When Leo jogged over to Paige Kennedy's apartment, Moose greeted him with a frantically wagging tail. His little buddy was here. Today, the dog walker wasn't around, but the employer, Paige, was. Leo had braced himself for a lecture about his inconsistent schedule. Instead, he found her slumped on the sofa, listlessly clutching a pillow to her stomach. Her long hair was disheveled, and her expression was miserable. She was wearing what looked like extremely short jean shorts, but the pillow covered most of them, creating the illusion that she was wearing nothing but a top over 2 long, pale legs. The pillow was pressed to her stomach, but her chest was resting on top of the pillow. It was quite a sight to walk in on. If it weren't for Stella's angelic image protecting his soul, he might have lost his composure. Even so, his eyes couldn't help but linger for a second. Paige had planned to chew Leo out today, but her period had hit, and the cramps were so bad she didn't have the energy to argue. Moose, the traitor, was keeping his distance from her, but the moment Leo walked in, the dog was all over him, circling and wagging his tail. Gotta check on my little buddy, Moose thought. Mom smells like blood today. She gets really cranky this time of month. Better not get too close. Ah, good, little buddy smells clean. No blood. He let out a happy bark. Leo reached down and ruffled the fur on Moose's head. Hey, Paige, what's up? You need anything? He asked, keeping a safe distance by the door. He shared Moose's instinct, best not to provoke the beast. A pillow came flying at his head. He caught it. Moose's eyes lit up. See? Just like a true golden retriever. My boy's got great reflexes. Not like those dumb huskies who can't even find a ball you throw right at them. With the pillow gone, Leo got a clear view of Paige's outfit. A tiny crop top that revealed a sliver of her slim, pale waist. The girl was toned. He'd always seen her in baggy clothes and assumed she was a bit thicker. How did such a small waist support all that? Paige, feeling his eyes on her, grabbed another pillow and hugged it to her chest, restoring her center of gravity. Leo had never had a girlfriend, but countless late-night dorm discussions had provided him with a wealth of knowledge on female biology. For instance, he knew that for a few days every month, their moods could be volatile. He also remembered her mentioning her period was coming after their tennis match. The timing added up. The AC was blasting, yet she was barely wearing anything. Didn't seem very smart. "Want to get you some hot water?" he offered. He'd heard it was a cure-all. Paige just grunted and rolled her eyes. Leo went to the kitchen with Moose trotting happily behind him. He spotted a water dispenser with a glass cabinet above it. Inside were teacups, pots, and various dry goods. Rosebuds, ginger candy. He put a piece of the ginger candy and a handful of rosebuds into a glass teapot, filled it with hot water from the dispenser, and set on a coffee table with a cup. Even if he was a rich man now, with over $1,000 to his name, you never disrespected a paying client. Paige had been regretting her outfit choice. The shorts were too tight, the top too revealing, and now she had cramps. It wasn't her usual cute, comfy style, but then she'd seen the way Leo's eyes had lingered on her chest, then her waist, then back to her chest. Even with his serious expression, a girl just knew. Suddenly, she didn't regret it so much. When he brought her the rose and ginger tea, she took a sip. It was sweet and spicy, and a warmth spread through her, easing the pain in her stomach. Still, she didn't feel like moving. "Maybe you can just play with Moose in the yard today," she said weakly. Leo shook his head firmly. "No way. You're paying me to do a job. I can't just phone it in. This yard is too small for him anyway. I'm taking him out." Paige stared at him, dumbfounded. "I want you to stay here with me, you idiot." Leo sensed her mood shifting back toward anger. He had no idea why. He'd heard that this time of the month made them unpredictable. Time to make a strategic retreat. He checked Moose's collar, loosening it a bit, and clipped on the leash. Paige watched in frustration as this clueless guy, who had done nothing but glance at her chest and make her tea, was now giving all his attention to the dog. What was so great about Moose anyway? Was he better looking than her? She curled up on the couch, too tired to even look at her phone, and turned on the TV. She listened as the idiot walked out the door, having a full-blown conversation with the dog. "Woof, woof. Sausages. No more sausages, Moose. You're getting chubby. Woof. Woof, woof. Two. Two is fine. All right, fine. Two. It is." Paige wanted to throw another pillow. He could understand the dog, but he couldn't understand her. Moose dragged Leo toward the street vendor's cart they both loved. The man got a corn dog and the dog got his 2 sausages. After their snack, Leo led Moose to the grassy riverbank where they'd been before. It was empty, so he unclipped the leash and let the dog run free. Being cooped up in an apartment all day was a dog's equivalent of a human's 9 to 5 job. At least the dog got an hour of freedom every day. Most humans were lucky to get 1 long vacation a year, and even that often got canceled. Leo planned to just sit and chill, maybe check his phone for a message from Stella, and bask in the sweet, tingling memory of them studying together. No wonder couples love doing that. Alex had been studying with that sophomore for 4 years now. After a few laps, Moose realized his little buddy hadn't joined him. A golden retriever who doesn't exercise has no future, he thought, and trotted back. He nudged Leo's arm with his nose, then started tugging at the hem of his shirt. "Woof, woof. Get up, run." Who could say no to a creature with soulful, liquid brown eyes, long, elegant legs, and a favorability rating over 80? Especially one who was so shamelessly affectionate. Still, when Moose tried to lick his face, Leo gently pushed him away. "A little less enthusiasm, buddy." He surrendered to Moose's charms and broke into a run alongside him. With his newly upgraded fitness stat of 7 out of 10, Leo was slightly above average for a human. For a canine, however, he was still just a bit lacking. Moose galloped on 4 legs while Leo sprinted on 2. After several laps, both were panting. Moose flopped onto the grass, his long pink tongue lolling out. Leo collapsed next to him, staring up at the sky. He was earning every penny of his hourly wage. But after the run, a feeling of pure, simple joy washed over him. He lay on the ground, no longer noticing the scratchy grass, and watched the white clouds drift across the blue sky. One of them looked just like Stella's smile. Boys and dogs were alike in many ways. Most of the time, they didn't overthink things. They were happy when they were happy, and a good run could fix almost anything. After a short rest, Moose saw that his little buddy was still lying down. He decided to let him be. The poor guy was hairless, practically disabled by dog standards. He got up and started chasing butterflies and grasshoppers on his own. Leo sat up and started taking pictures of Moose to send to Paige, his employer. He got one particularly good shot. Moose standing at the edge of the river, gazing thoughtfully at the water. He looked like a philosopher dog. Leo sent the picture to Paige and Cody. Then he sent the philosopher dog picture to Stella with a caption. "The dog says he misses you." He expected it to be met with the same silence as his previous messages. But suddenly, the The system's voice screamed in his head. Congratulations, host. Significant progress has been made with Platinum Tier Target Stella Vance. Favorability has reached 82. Please continue your efforts and climb to new heights. Leo blinked. My girl is so easy to win over. It was just a picture of dog. How much love has she been missing in her life? In that moment, he didn't feel triumphant. He just felt an overwhelming urge to hold her. Stella stared at the picture of the golden retriever on her phone, nearly dropping it. After her mother had given away her childhood puppy, which had later met a tragic end, the subject of dogs had become taboo in their house. Her mother, racked with guilt, never brought it up. Her father, by silent agreement, didn't either. Stella never mentioned it again, acting as if it had never happened. She was the type to keep things bottled up, never sharing her troubles. She thought it was foolish to burden others with her problems. It only gave them something to laugh at. In that way, she and her roommate, Jessica Monroe, were alike. Jessica never talked about her struggles either. Stella rode her motorcycle because the speed and the wind helped her forget. It was her escape. When she saw Leo's picture of the golden retriever by the river, it was as if she were seeing her own dog, Chun-Chun, all grown up. He would have looked just like that, noble and intelligent. Then she read the text. He misses you. Tears instantly welled in her eyes. It was as if Chun-Chun was still here, telling her he missed her. A sob escaped her lips. He wasn't gone. Years later, he had grown into a magnificent, gentle dog, standing proudly by the river. She was crying and smiling at the same time. Just then, her phone rang. It was her mother, Victoria Vance. Sweetheart, I'm at your school's main gate. Let's have dinner. Her mother was already here. Stella tried to wipe her tears, but they just kept coming. This was the price of asking for help. This was her punishment. She had made one offhand comment to her mother, and now her mother had staged a full-scale invasion. A beautiful two-tone blue and white Bentley was parked at the university entrance. As the sun began to set, Leo walked Moose back home. The dog was reluctant to leave his new best friend. As they passed the main drag of the strip, Leo spotted an incredibly beautiful car parked near the entrance. It was a Bentley, a flying bee. The woman in the driver's seat was stunning, dressed in a royal blue power suit, her skin flawless, a pair of designer sunglasses hiding her eyes. She looked like a celebrity. The system wasn't flagging her as a target, which probably meant she wasn't single. Victoria Vance tapped her fingers on the steering wheel, watching the students pass by. They all looked so mediocre, sloppy, aimless. She had wanted Stella to study abroad, but her husband had put his foot down. Stella had refused to even consider retaking the entrance exams. Now her daughter was wasting 4 years at a place like this. She scanned the crowd again. A boy walking a golden retriever caught her eye. He was decent looking, with a bright smile. But boys who used pets to pick up girls were almost always players. And as he got closer, she saw the Rolex on his wrist. He was probably one of those rich kids from the honors college, the dumping ground for spoiled brats who couldn't get into a real university. Thank God Stella was finally leaving for her study abroad program soon. The thought of her dating a player like that was terrifying. Leo safely returned Moose to the apartment and found Paige Kennedy miraculously revived. She was sitting cross-legged on the sofa, surrounded by a mountain of takeout: buffalo wings, jalapeno poppers, 3 different kinds of cake, a milkshake, a family-sized bag of chips fruit. A full-on feast. When Leo walked in, she was happily gnawing on a chicken wing. He recoiled in mock horror. Moose, however, bounded forward excitedly. Paige had ordered a ton of food the moment she started feeling better. She'd heard a rumor that you don't gain weight when you eat on your period, so she was taking full advantage. She was convinced she had a fat-prone body type. At 5 feet 5 inches and only 120 pounds, she wasn't heavy, but her round face and large chest made her look heavier than she was. Her roommate, who was taller and weighed more, but had a sharp jawline and was flat-chested, looked thinner. Life was so unfair. Leo, what are you hiding for? Come eat with me, Paige said, her mouth greasy. There were 2 faint streaks of sauce on her cheeks, making her look like a cat. Leo had an irrational fear of things with claws. Watching Paige's red lips suck the meat off a chicken wing was both horrifying and strangely fascinating. No thanks, I can't. I have plans with my roommates, he said, backing away. See you tomorrow, Moose. Woof woof. Moose barked his goodbyes. Be here tomorrow. Keep up the training. Paige scowled. Was he disgusted with her just because she'd changed into a baggy sweatsuit? Men, they're all the same. Don't you dare leave, she said bossily. I bought snacks for you, too. It's a thank you from Moose. Leo glanced at the mountain of food in front of her, then at the huge bag of snacks sitting by the door. If she kept eating like this, hot, then cold, spicy, then sweet, She wasn't just going to have cramps tomorrow. She'd have a massive stomachache. He realized that with his slightly increased intelligence, he could now perceive Paige's lack of foresight. He wondered if people used to see him the same way. The thought made him soften. Her cluelessness was actually kind of endearing. Worried she'd devour the entire second bag of snacks herself, he picked it up. Take it easy, Paige. You'll make yourself sick, he advised before leaving. Mind your own business, she retorted. After he left, the feast suddenly seemed less appealing. He told me to take it easy. He said I'd get sick. Was he worried about me? Does Leo have a crush on me? She agonized over it for a moment. Fine. If he asks me out, I guess I'll say yes. Decision made, she happily went back to her wings. Leo headed back to the dorm to shower, covered in a fine layer of golden fur. A text message pinged on his phone. Cash assets, plus $80. He was also carrying at least $50 worth of snacks. Paige could be a pain, but she was generous. He took a quick shower and ran back to the room, just in time to hear Jordan yell, "Holy crap." When Jordan yelled like that, it was never about a girl. It was usually about shoes. Leo, you gotta see this. He shoved his phone in Leo's face. It was a group chat called Student Deals and Discounts. Leo sighed. The richest guy in their dorm was obsessed with bargain hunting. Ignore the group name. Look at the pictures, Jordan said. It was the same two-tone Bentley from the university entrance. A Bentley, parked right outside our school. Jordan was practically vibrating. Dude, your dad drives a Bentley to business meetings. Why are you so excited? That's not the point. The point is who's inside. Someone got a close-up shot. There are two gorgeous women in there. Leo scrolled down and saw the picture. It wasn't crystal clear, but it was good enough. In the passenger seat was Stella, the diamond clips sparkling in her hair, wearing the same white dress he had touched earlier. The woman in the driver's seat. No wonder he thought she looked familiar. She had to be Stella's mother. They seemed to be talking, but their expressions were tense. In that moment, Leo, with his $1,000 and a potential income of $85 a day, felt a profound silence settle over him. Some people drove cars that were worth more than his entire family's net worth combined. How could he ever compete with that? A Bentley with two hot women inside, and you're not even excited? What's wrong with you, man? Jordan asked. What's it got to do with us? Leo said, forcing a grin. Anyway, dinner's on me tonight. What do you guys want? I'm feeling generous. You can even pick something over $20 a person. 20? Try 200. Jordan shot back, his attention successfully diverted. Sean, wearing a faded t-shirt, burst in. 200 for what? Concert tickets? The conversation spiraled from there. Leo finished dressing and stood in front of the mirror, drying his hair. The reflection showed a decent-looking kid with a sad, uncertain look in his eyes. He was 21 years old, young, and had nothing. Or why did a guy who rode a shared bike have to worry about whether a girl in a Bentley was happy or not? He was losing his mind. Their usual spot on the strip was a dive bar called Lucky's that served surprisingly good food. Alex, the mysterious man of influence, had arrived early and secured their favorite booth by the window, which offered a surprisingly decent view of the campus pond. They feasted on buffalo wings, loaded chili cheese fries, and bacon cheeseburgers. I'd like to propose a toast, Alex said, raising his plastic cup of iced tea. To our last year of college. May we all get what we're looking for. Sean, Jordan, and Leo raised their cups. To getting what we're looking for. The plastic cups clinked, and tea sloshed over the rims. For the seniors, September was the beginning of the end. For the freshmen, it was the start of everything. As Alex's group made their solemn toast, a nearby table of freshmen chattered excitedly about their classes, girls, legendary professors, student government, and which clubs to join. Listening to them was like traveling back in time to their own first year. They had been just as clueless, just as full of hope. A heavy silence fell over their table. It was Sean who finally broke it. Hey, Leo, didn't you forget about the competition tonight? Leo blinked. What competition? The other day we were scrolling TikTok and you saw that trend, the one about just having to be bold. You said if you ever sang on stage, you go viral. You were trying to encourage me to keep making videos, remember? Sean mumbled, running a hand through his messy hair, his eyes hopeful. I told you about the Northwood Idol competition. You said you'd do it. You remember, right? Oh, crap. Was that the night he'd had half a beer and forgotten his own name? Had he really promised Sean he'd sing on stage? He had crippling stage fright. What if he froze? He shot a desperate look at Alex, hoping for a miracle. Alex nodded decisively. It's all good, Leo. I already checked the rules. Seniors can participate. And the grand prize this year is the new iPhone. Jordan, always eager for drama, chimed in. Leo, I'll be your stylist. I just bought this amazing sequin jacket. Seriously, you'll walk on stage and win before you even open your mouth. Sean looked at him earnestly. Leo, Even if you don't win, the first money we make from the TikTok channel, we'll use it to buy you the new iPhone. Sean, don't do this to me, Leo thought. He was just like Moose, fluffy, with those same pleading puppy dog eyes. He knew Leo couldn't resist. Leo had been keeping up with Sean's TikTok account. It was hard not to. He was the star of every single video. A few had actually gotten a decent number of likes, but most were stuck in the double or triple digits. He'd stopped reading the comments after the first few times. Some people were just mean, calling him ugly. Others were creepy, like the guys asking him out. Thankfully, Sean managed the account. But Sean's follower count was slowly but surely climbing. He was almost at 10,000. Even without any money coming in, the growth was a form of validation. Sean was standing taller these days, his voice was louder, and he no longer dropped everything whenever a girl asked for a favor. The roommates rallied around him, and Leo, who generally went with the flow, felt himself being swept along. But this was a stage, in front of people, real live people. His voice would shake. The last time he'd recorded a song for Stella, he'd been hiding under a clothesline on the roof in the middle of the night. He was trying to think of a valid excuse when the system's voice popped into his head. Host has exceeded expectations on the pet care task, earning the sincere affection of both pet and owner. Reward: intermediate empathy buff, 1 day. Express yourself with sincerity, and others will feel what you feel. The next time they hear a similar message, they will think of you. Wow, Leo thought. That's a generous buff. Is the system trying to rig the competition for me? He took a bite of a buffalo wing to calm his nerves. Dinner with his roommates was never about deep conversation, but the easy banter and shared stories always left him feeling full in more ways than one. After dinner, Leo paid the bill, a modest $81, and they headed back to the dorm to get ready. The competition started at 8. The system, apparently desperate for Leo to secure his future as a trophy husband, even rewarded him for completing the dinner with friends task with a 1 shade lighter skin buff. Jordan insisted on doing his makeup, arguing that the stage lights would wash him out completely. Sean and Alex held Leo down while Jordan unleashed his arsenal of 108 different cosmetic products. Jordan's sequin jacket was a no-go. It was several sizes too big, so Alex lent him a crisp, new white button-down shirt. With his own casual pants, sneakers, and a pair of Alex's gold-rimmed, non-prescription glasses, the look was complete. Jordan had worked some kind of magic on his face. The guy in the mirror looked different, sharper. He'd gone from a 7 to an 8. With the glasses, he was the classic handsome nerd with a dark side type. At 7:30, they set off, with Jordan as baggage handler, Sean as cameraman, and Alex as the hype man. The auditorium was already packed. Freshmen looked around with wide eyes, sophomores were coupled up, and there were only a handful of juniors and seniors scattered about. Stella had brought her mother, deliberately steering her toward the loudest, most crowded place on campus. No matter where they went, her mother would find something to complain about. It was better to drown her out with sheer noise. She didn't dare introduce her to her roommates. Her mother, with her advanced degrees and immense wealth, could be brutally condescending. Stella had seen her eviscerate employees at her company, and she couldn't bear to subject Jessica to that kind of arrogant scrutiny. Her mother had said she wanted to understand her life. So, Stella brought her here. Fine, she thought. Understand this. Banners fluttered in the evening breeze. The campus fountains danced under colored lights. The air was thick with the buzz of the crowd, a chaotic energy that vibrated from the makeshift stage set up on the main quad for Northwood Idol. The quality of any university event depended entirely on how good the student organizers were at hustling for sponsorships. For a singing competition like this, they'd actually done pretty well. At least there was a stage, proper lighting, and they were projecting everything onto the university's massive outdoor screen. An event like this, with high student participation and even higher emotions, was prime real estate for advertising. The stage was plastered with logos, a local energy drink, a billboard for a nearby driving school, a promo for the boba tea place on the student strip, and even an ad for a greasy pizza joint called Lucky's. Whoever was in charge of sponsorships this year clearly had some serious connections on campus. Alex Young watched the scene with a fond, nostalgic look on his face. This was all old hat to him. This used to be his turf. He never competed, but he'd been the one behind the scenes organizing massive events just like this several times. Northwood Idol had been his first big project. He'd handled every single detail, from securing sponsorships to pre-show publicity, managing registrations, coordinating with the judges, handing out awards, and writing the post-event report for the dean's office. His year had been a massive success. They'd even made the local evening news and gotten a write-up in the Bridgeport Chronicle. At first, it had all felt like playing house like a kid's game. But after going through the entire process, Alex had come to a realization. The whole world was just one big, disorganized production. It was all manageable, a piece of cake. He was only a sophomore at the time, and the success went straight to his head. He'd gone home that summer impossibly arrogant, only to get a harsh reality check from his father. His dad had dragged him to a few stuffy political fundraisers, showing him what real power looked like. When he came back to campus, he was a lot more humble. Tonight, 20 contestants were left. 10 would be eliminated, and the remaining 10 would be ranked. There had been a preliminary screening process where contestants submitted video auditions, a necessary step to avoid any tone-deaf disasters that could derail the whole show. Sean had submitted the video of Leo singing at the fire mic, and he'd sailed right through. Leo checked the program. He was fifth. Not too early, not too late. A pretty good spot. The first few contestants would warm up the stage, and by then, anyone who was planning on coming would have already arrived. If you were scheduled too late, you risked the audience getting bored and leaving early. But you also didn't want to be at the very end, when everyone was tired and the energy had fizzled out. He was surprised to see the first name on the list, Jessica Monroe. Jordan practically vibrated with excitement. "I gotta go buy flowers," he announced. "For my goddess." Going first was always risky. You were the guinea pig for any technical glitches. Sometimes the mic wasn't even properly adjusted. Leo wondered idly if Jessica was trying to win prize money for a new phone. But as the unofficial queen of the English department, Jessica Monroe was a major draw, a built-in publicity stunt. Sure enough, her poster was plastered everywhere, touting her as fluent in 4 languages: English, Spanish, Japanese, and Korean. Meanwhile, near the entrance to the quad, Victoria Vance was frantically spraying her legs with bug repellent. Her pale, smooth calves were already dotted with angry red welts. It was miserable, hot, stuffy, and deafeningly loud. But she endured it. After Stella had cryptically asked her if she'd ever been in love, a blaring alarm had gone off in Victoria's head. Something was up. Ignoring her husband's protests, she had insisted on coming to the campus herself to investigate. She was unimpressed with every single thing she saw. The whole place could be summed up in 3 words: dirty, messy, and cheap. But for her daughter's sake, she gritted her teeth and squeezed through the sweaty throngs of students. "Excuse me." A large guy suddenly barreled past, nearly knocking her over. He was wearing something sparkly and clutching a bouquet of flowers. So rude. Victoria was about to unleash a tirade, but the guy had already vanished into the crowd like a surprisingly nimble rhino. "Phew," Jordan gasped, finally reaching his friends. He was completely out of breath. "It hasn't started, right? I nearly died out there. These freshmen have no business sense. An event this big, and no one thinks to set up a flower stand? I had to run all the way to the student strip. I'm exhausted." Thanks to Alex's connections, they had snagged VIP seats in the front few rows. The venue was still uncomfortably warm, though. The portable AC units weren't cutting it. Leo glanced at the bouquet Jordan had bought. Carnations, surrounded by a cloud of baby's breath. He almost laughed. Sean couldn't hold back. "Dude, if you like her, you're supposed to buy roses. What are carnations for?" Jordan blushed. "Roses are too obvious. It's better to be a little more subtle." Leo, Alex, and Sean exchanged a look. In an age of rose emojis spammed in every text, subtlety was the last thing a bouquet of roses suggested. Even if you gave Jessica a dozen red roses, Leo thought, she wouldn't mistake it for a declaration of love. Other girls might be made of water, but Jessica Monroe was made of concrete. The stage lights dimmed. The competition was starting. Jessica Monroe walked on stage. She was wearing an outfit straight out of a 2000s pop music video, a light blue button-down shirt tied up to expose her midriff, and a short plaid skirt. The shirt was so tight, it looked like the buttons were fighting for their lives. The skirt was daringly short, its hem bouncing like seafoam on a wave with every step. Her legs weren't perfectly straight, but they radiated a raw, magnetic appeal. Maybe it was the skirt or the way the stage lights hit her, but despite the safety shorts undoubtedly underneath, a chorus of cheers and whistles erupted from the crowd. Her long, dark hair, cascading almost to her waist, was her crowning glory. She moved with a liquid grace. The opening notes of the song began to play, but before she sang a word, she launched into a confident dance routine, bending down, running a hand up her leg, smiling with a casual, wild freedom. Her hair flew around her, a picture of vibrant, unapologetic youth. She knew exactly how to work a crowd. With that single opening move, the chaotic chatter of the audience died down. Every eye suddenly locked on her. Leo suddenly understood why they'd put her first. Knowing her, the girl who never did anything without a motive and whose moral compass was always spinning, there was probably some kind of backroom deal involved. Just that short dance sequence was enough to set the quad on fire. Guys were shouting, whistling, and screaming her name. Even younger professors on the judging panel were blushing. Victoria Vance, who had been deliberately led into the densest part of the crowd by her daughter, watched the girl preening on stage with a deep frown. Her beautiful face could have frozen water. This is a college student? Dressed like that? Does she have no shame? Don't her parents teach her anything? Don't the professors care? If my daughter ever dressed like that, I'd slap her. Stella, sitting beside her, was also surprised. She hadn't even known Jessica was competing in Northwood Idol. Jessica must have mentioned it in the dorm, but Stella hadn't been paying attention. She'd spent most of her time lately with her headphones on, lost in her own world. Watching the explosive energy radiating from Jessica on stage, Stella felt a pang of envy. The girl was so unrestrained, so fiercely alive. It felt like you could drop her on a deserted island, and she'd not only survive, but thrive. And here Stella was, with no real problems to speak of, yet life felt like such a heavy burden. So dramatic. Stella shook her head and joined the roaring applause. When Jessica's first note rang out, her powerful voice cut through the noise. It was a pure, unaccented English, belted out with a feeling of grand defiance. A huge voice from such a small frame. The snow glows white on the mountain tonight. Not a footprint to be seen. A kingdom of isolation, and it looks like I'm the queen. It was electrifying. Hearing it live, the power of her voice was undeniable. She sang with a raw intensity that was completely at odds with the flirty persona she'd projected moments before. In that moment, she was the Ice Queen. Her stage presence was incredible. She had zero fear. She sang like she was shouting a declaration to the world. Her voice even cracked a little on the high notes, but it only added to the passion. Another wave of applause swept through the quad. The lyrics, in English and Spanish, scrolled across the giant screen behind her, and students in the audience started singing along. Jordan was on his feet, waving a glow stick, his large frame swaying in time with his goddess on stage. Be the good girl you always have to be. Conceal, don't feel, don't let them know. Well, now they know. Let it go, let it go. Sweat glistened on her forehead. The way she casually pushed her hair back was pure seduction. Who wouldn't love the English department's queen? Fluent, a great singer, beautiful, and radiating confidence. The song ended. Jessica bowed and addressed the audience. Hey everyone, I'm Jessica Monroe from the sophomore English class. Thank you for your support. The song finished. She instantly reverted to a super high-pitched, cutesy influencer voice, as if possessed by the spirit of a cartoon character. She even put a hand to her flushed cheek and made a heart shape with her fingers, winking at the crowd. The contrast was staggering. One moment, she was a powerhouse belting out a defiant anthem. The next, she was all sugar and spice. Jordan, go on, his roommates hissed. You bought the flowers, the song's over, get up there. Jordan was frantically wiping sweat from his face with a tissue. Suddenly, he shoved the bouquet into Leo's arms. Leo, please, I'm begging you just this once. You give them to her. I'll be your servant for a month. I'll do anything you say. Leo was baffled. It's your crush. Why do you want me to give her flowers? Hurry, hurry, Leo. She's about to leave the stage. Jordan gave him a hard shove. Leo stumbled forward, completely bewildered. Sean and Alex just shook their heads. Seriously, Jordan? You're the rich kid. What are you so afraid of? Even Sean, the self-proclaimed simp with nothing to his name, had more game than this. I don't get it, Sean muttered. Didn't you say she's been messaging you lately? Jordan fell silent, thinking back to their recent chats. He replayed the gentle, smiling emoji she had sent him. Yes, she had been messaging him, but he'd eventually realized the reason she was messaging him was to ask about Leo, where he was, what he was doing. He liked her, so he wanted to do what would make her happy. If he gave her the flowers, she might not care. But if Leo gave them to her, she would be thrilled. It was a subtle, painful truth he couldn't explain to anyone. A true simp doesn't just buy his crush breakfast. He asks what her boyfriend likes, too. Spicy or not, hold the cilantro. The screams, the applause, the unbridled joy. It was a festival of youth, vibrant and boiling over. As Victoria Vance had watched the girl dance, a deep furrow had formed between her brows. Classless, she'd thought. But as the girl began to sing, the furrow slowly softened. The song was good, at least. Her English was excellent. But when the singing stopped and that cloying, baby doll voice took over, Victoria's hands clenched the handles of her designer handbag so tightly the leather groaned. She despised affected girls like that. Couldn't she just speak normally? Stella, on the other hand, relaxed. The Jessica who had been singing was a stranger, nothing like the girl she knew. But this Jessica, the flirty, saccharine one with the influencer voice, that was her. The serious, hardworking singer had been so unfamiliar it had unsettled her. Just then, someone walked onto the stage to give Jessica flowers. Stella froze. She watched as a boy in a collared shirt and glasses walked up, holding a bouquet of white carnations, and handed them to Jessica. He leaned in and said something, too far from a mic for anyone to hear. But Stella saw the result. A massive, radiant smile bloomed across Jessica's face. A sudden chill shot through Stella's hands. Her whole body went rigid. Victoria, distracted, was swatting at a mosquito that had landed on her leg and missed the entire exchange. In this chaotic environment, her anxiety was peaking, and she didn't notice the sudden shift in her daughter's mood. Excited shrieks and wolf whistles erupted from the crowd, continuing until the next contestant took the stage. Leo returned to his seat, his heart still pounding. He pressed a hand to his chest. That was terrifying. Jessica had looked genuinely surprised to see him. Then her expression shifted into a triumphant, predatory smile, both coquettish and fierce. He had quickly explained that his roommate, Jordan, had bought the flowers. Jessica had just muttered, "Coward," though he wasn't sure if she meant him or Jordan. Either way, he was sweating. He felt a strange pang of guilt, even though he was completely innocent. He hadn't done a single thing wrong. So why did he feel so guilty? Jessica had kicked things off with a bang, and now more and more students were flocking to the quad. Even Laura Miller had wheeled Cody over on their evening walk, drawn by the commotion. At his age, Cody was magnetically attracted to any and all chaos. Paige Kennedy was still snacking, having decided this would be her dinner. A freshman from her department was scheduled to sing later, and her roommate was currently in the throes of a massive crush on him, insisting he looked just like some famous actor and dragging Paige along as her personal cheer squad. Victoria was still restless, but Stella seemed to have drifted off somewhere else entirely. Her mind was a whirlwind of what-ifs. She was supposed to be going abroad. She had decided not to get involved with Leo. So why had she, step by step, betrayed her own resolutions? Running with him, eating breakfast with him, riding bikes, walking through that wheat field, studying together, even exchanging watches. She hadn't worn his, afraid her mother would notice. But just now, on stage, Leo had been wearing hers. And watching that brilliant smile spread across Jessica's face, she felt an unfamiliar sickness in her stomach. She was the one who had decided to let this go. So why did the slightest hint that he might like someone else make her feel so cold, her body so stiff, her palms slick with sweat? She had told herself it was just curiosity. A crush. Maybe a little more than a crush. But in that moment, she realized she had been lying to herself. It was more than curiosity, more than a crush. Her heart had already made its move, long before her head had caught up, and now it was the first to feel the pain. A vast sense of loss washed over her, and for some reason, Leo hadn't sent her a single message. Leo hadn't messaged Stella because he'd heard her family was in town. He figured she was busy and didn't want to bother her. One by one, the contestants performed. Before the show, his roommates had hyped him up relentlessly. "You're amazing, you're a legend, you're invincible, just get up there and sing." But now, watching the other performers, he realized how incredible they all were. Jessica, for one, was a force of nature. Her performance had been a masterclass in stage presence, a showcase of her English skills that had electrified the entire audience. Forget technical skill. The moment she stepped on stage, the applause never stopped. The second guy was impressive too, tall and solid as a tree, and he'd belted out an opera piece, a pure display of vocal pyrotechnics. The third guy was a rapper. Leo couldn't understand most of it without the lyrics on the big screen, but he looked cool, all flash and glitter, and a group of girls in the front row were screaming for him. Leo didn't even notice the fourth contestant because he was fifth. It was his turn to head backstage. He was terrified. His three roommates walked him to the side of the stage. Sean filmed the whole thing on his phone. Jordan was in full hype man mode. "Thanks, Leo, seriously. I'll get you flowers next, I swear. Roses. I already ordered them on DoorDash." Alex just clapped him on the shoulder. "You got this, Leo. You're the best-looking guy in our dorm. We're proud of you." Leo's stomach twisted. "That just makes me more nervous." He took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. He hadn't planned on singing this song. But when Jordan had shown him those pictures in the group chat earlier, something in his heart had stirred. He had chosen a song called "To Be Human." It was an older, obscure indie song he'd heard once in the back of a taxi, and it had shaken him to his core. He was so nervous it felt like he was walking out with his eyes closed. In reality, they were wide open, but the stage lights were so blinding that all he could see was a wall of white. He couldn't make out a single face in the audience. He thought about his life lately. It felt like a dream. Sometimes he was floating, sometimes he was lost, sometimes he was grounded, but it never felt completely real. You work so so hard, only to see the finish line get further and further away, until it's almost impossible to believe it was ever there. The white light beat down on him. He gripped the microphone, his palms slick with sweat. He couldn't see the crowd, but he could see the familiar, glowing time bar from the system hovering over his head. It felt strangely comforting, like a secret companion in some bizarre coming-of-age fantasy. The song's intro was quiet, a simple, gentle melody. He adjusted the mic stand and wiped his hand on his pants. The audience saw a clean-cut boy with glasses walk onto the stage. His expression was serious, maybe a little nervous. He let go of the mic for a second to wipe his hand on the hem of his shirt, leaving a small wrinkle in the fabric. He was dressed simply, a casual white button-down, black pants, sneakers. He looked like the kind of guy you'd see in a LensCrafters ad or on a brochure for a private prep school. Clean and neat. A close-up of his face filled the screen behind him. His eyelashes were so long, they were visible even behind his glasses. You'd think they'd brush against the lenses. The intro was short, flowing like a slow stream. Someone in the crowd was chatting. Someone was eating snacks. Someone was on the phone. Someone was swatting a mosquito. Someone was daydreaming. Someone was heartbroken. Someone was filled with ambition. The boy raised the microphone to his lips and began to sing. Promised myself I'd never smoke a cigarette. Now it's the only damn thing that helps me forget. Used to dream of changing the whole wide world. Now I just dream of paying the rent. We all change. I guess that's the deal, I'm sorry. They say we're all born equal under God, but some kids get the kingdom. Some just get the rod. Some people only ever see the ground, while others spit on them from way up high. And that's the truth, I'm sorry. The other day, I put my hands together and prayed, looked in the mirror at the mess I'd made. I spent half of my youth just trying to learn what it means to be a decent man. I'm sorry to the kid I was, but after all these miles, don't you dare forget where you began. The clear voice flowed from the microphone, starting as a stream, then merging into a river. The river rushed toward the sea, and though the surface of the ocean was calm, a powerful storm was churning underneath, waves building upon waves until they formed a tidal wave of sound. It crashed over everyone in the audience. No one was chatting. No one was eating snacks. No one was on the phone. No one was swatting a mosquito. No one was daydreaming. No one was heartbroken. No one was filled with ambition. They say we're all born equal under God, but some kids get the kingdom. Some just get the rod. I want to forget everything I've known before. Become a cynic who doesn't ask for more. From today on, I'll stay away from the light and be a clever fox that runs in the night. On stage, as the boy sang, his eyes turned red. A tear escaped from the corner of his eye and traced a path down his cheek. Some are born to be kings, and he was just Leo, a little mouse living the most ordinary life, dreaming an extraordinary dream. After all these miles, don't you dare forget where you began. His dad's voice, my Leo is smarter than me. Even he's so much more successful. His mom's voice, my Leo is such a good boy. He'll take care of me when I'm old. His high school teacher's voice, Leo, the world is yours for the taking. Go get it, son. His college professor's voice, you kids know nothing. What can you possibly do? Nothing. Just get in line and be a good little worker bee. A girl's voice, I'm sorry. You're a really nice guy. The song was devastating. The entire quad was silent. On the big screen, the boy held the microphone. He wasn't screaming or sobbing. His voice was steady, almost calm, but tears were streaming down his face. He had sung himself to tears, and he'd taken everyone else with him. A young professor on the judging panel took off his thick glasses and kept wiping his eyes, as if he didn't know why. He'd only agreed to be a judge because a student told him it paid $800 for the night. $800 was a nice chunk off his mortgage payment. So he came, even though he hated the noise and would have much rather been home resting. Paige Kennedy, her mouth full of chips, couldn't swallow or spit them out. She just sat there and cried. The boy on stage looked so sad, and it made her feel so sad, too. Laura Miller stood at the edge of the crowd with Cody. For some reason, she thought of her ex-husband, of the life they had tried to build together, and how they had forgotten where they began. A mosquito landed on Victoria Vance's leg. She didn't slap it. She just clutched her bag, her eyes fixed on the stage. And beside her, Stella was a wreck, tears pouring down her cheeks. She didn't know what to say. It felt like he was singing that song for her. Jessica Monroe had been backstage, flirting with a stagehand, when she heard the line, "Some people only ever see the ground, while others spit on them from way up high." She froze, and the tears came flooding out. Sean held up his phone, struggling to keep it steady. He was filming Leo, but his mind was a slideshow of his own life. His father, bent over with work. His mother, her head bowed in exhaustion. The endless mountains of his hometown. The suffocating traffic of the city. The gray, smoggy sky. Jordan actually did it. He ran onto the stage, clutching a massive bouquet of red roses, and gave them to Leo. Leo stared at Jordan, who was still wearing his sequin shirt. As his roommate ran toward him with the roses, a single thought crossed Leo's mind. Oh, great. Tomorrow, the school will amend the student handbook. It won't just be a ban on heterosexual relationships. It'll be a ban on relationships, period. You absolute animal, he thought. You buy your crush carnations, but you buy your roommate red roses? He held the bouquet, not sure whether to laugh or cry. The first bouquet of roses he'd ever received in his life was from his roommate. Thankfully, the awkward moment was quickly broken when someone else ran up on stage. It was Paige Kennedy, holding a huge, colorful bouquet of her own. She'd snatched the flowers her roommate had bought for the handsome freshman, and on pure impulse, had rushed the stage. Paige handed the flowers to Leo, her eyes red, her voice choked with emotion. Leo, you sang so beautifully. Please don't ever sing that again. It hurt too much. Then she burst into tears and ran off. Leo stood there dumbfounded. That's also going to cause a misunderstanding. Seriously. But at least it had dispelled the intensely weird vibe from Jordan's red roses. Soon, more people came up to give him flowers. The applause was thunderous. The bouquets kept coming, and the stage lights felt blindingly bright. Standing there, Leo's heart swelled. He finally understood why so many people wanted to be famous. In this one moment, you felt like you were shining. You could almost believe you were a star. But he centered himself quickly. In a crucial moment like this, his unshakable core buff was a lifesaver. He wasn't going to get carried away by a little applause. He knew that when people cry and cheer for a song, most of the time, they aren't cheering for the singer. They're cheering for themselves. They applaud because the emotion resonated so deeply. Applause for the song and applause for their own lives. Thank you, everyone, he said in the mic, his voice steady. I'm Leo Foster from the Information Management Program. I hope we can all hold on to who we are, no matter how many miles we travel. The applause erupted again, a wave of sound that seemed to go on forever. When he finally got off stage, he was mobbed by his roommates in a group hug. He didn't even know if his singing was technically good. He'd been so emotional he'd just cried his way through it. But the fact that he could introduce himself clearly at the end, deliver a coherent, encouraging sentence without stuttering or his voice shaking in front of all these people, that felt like progress. He remembered his first week of freshman year, standing in front of his class for self-introductions, stammering his way through his name, his high school, and for some reason his height. The memory made him cringe. But back then, everyone was just as awkward. Everyone except for people like Alex, who, thanks to his family background and some genetic mutation, could turn a simple introduction into a full-blown speech that earned a round of applause. Most people were just ordinary, and sometimes there was a real comfort in being part of the majority. Just another cow in a herd of cows. Life was pretty peaceful when all you had to do was graze. For Leo, the performance was over. Just getting on stage was a victory. The prizes and rankings were secondary. With senior year and job interviews looming, the courage to get up on stage and face a crowd was invaluable. The next time he was in an interview, maybe he wouldn't be so nervous he couldn't speak. Late night food run. Let's go. I'm in. Absolutely. Alex had been deeply moved by the song, too. His roommates envied him, calling him Senator Young. But he was the one in the dorm who understood class and background disparities better than anyone. They had never really experienced it firsthand, but he had. He was better off than most students, sure, but among the truly well-connected kids, the son of a city water commissioner was nobody. He was the one pouring tea and fetching drinks for them. He had seen the gap up close, which was why he was so much more ambitious, so hungry for success. He didn't want to pour tea for people forever. He wanted to be the one who had his tea poured for him, the one people smiled and bowed to, the one they told their best stories to, just to make him laugh. Not the other way around. Alex's insecurities ran deeper than Leo or Sean could possibly understand. They were ingrained, intense, almost pathological. Sometimes, just being a healthy, normal person was a blessing in itself. The go-to late-night trifecta: wings, beer, and loaded fries. The places on the student strip usually displayed fruity hard ciders more openly than actual beer, but if you asked for beer, they had it. Leo, you were incredible, Jordan said, his voice still buzzing with excitement. The second you started singing, I felt like I was going to ascend. It was like my soul was leaving my body and coming back to life. Jordan was the least emotionally affected. He truly was born with a silver spoon. His older brother had experienced some of the family's leaner years, but by the time Jordan was old enough to remember, things had always been good. His biggest struggles were his family nagging him to lose weight, which, while annoying, wasn't exactly hardship. So he felt something, but not much. He was still able to joke around. Sean, who had felt it the most, was silent. There was too much to say, so he said nothing at all. A dormant volcano. Alex didn't say much either. Action spoke louder than words, and the things he truly intended to do were things he never spoke about. The four of them walked toward the student strip. The performance was over, the mission accomplished. A wave of relief washed over them, and their steps felt lighter. It was a strange feeling. The release, after a period of intense pressure, felt even better than just cruising along steadily. As they reached the entrance to the strip, they saw a little boy struggling with his bike. He was trying to get it through one of the metal barricades designed to keep cars out, but the pedal kept getting stuck. He pushed forward, it jammed. He pulled back, it jammed. It was almost comical. The bike was a little too big for him. People walked past without a second glance. Without thinking, Leo strode forward. He helped the boy tilt the bike, lifting it carefully so the pedal cleared the steel pipe. The bike slid through easily. The boy beamed, hopping onto his oversized bike. "Thanks, mister," he called out as he pedaled away. Leo waved. He'd been small for his age, too, and remembered how much effort it took to ride a bike that was too big. Watching the small figure disappear into the night, it was like seeing a ghost of himself. Leo smiled and turned to rejoin his friends. On the side of the road, a mother and daughter stood in silence. After hearing Leo's song, Stella couldn't stand to be in a noisy quad for another second. She had brought her mother here to annoy her, but she never expected to hear Leo sing. The moment he finished, she had an overwhelming urge to run on stage, to give him flowers, to hug him. When she saw the tears on the big screen, visible even behind his glasses, she couldn't stop her own. But her mother was right there. She couldn't. She wasn't allowed. And in that constraint, she understood his song even more deeply. He had sung it for her, and he hadn't dared to tell her. He cried. He sang so beautifully, so calmly, and yet he cried. Silent tears, just like the song. Not a scream, but a quiet devastation that left you in ruins. Her mother, for once, was uncharacteristically quiet. She'd seen her daughter's red-rimmed eyes and, miraculously, hadn't said a word. The two of them walked toward the student strip in a heavy silence. Victoria's mind was in turmoil. She had grown up wealthy, but her family had lost everything. She'd lived through some very hard times before marrying her husband, and while their life was comfortable now, it was a step down from where she'd started. She spent lavishly, trying to compensate for what she'd lost. She rarely thought about the past, wanting only to give her daughter the best of everything, to shield her from every hardship she herself had endured. She just wanted Stella to be happy, but it wasn't working. No matter what she did, her daughter was unhappy, constantly fighting with her, defying her. Now, in middle age, she was plagued by anxieties. She had money, but her youth was gone. Her body was changing. She couldn't eat what she wanted. She suffered from insomnia. Her skin was losing its elasticity. No matter how much she spent on cosmetic treatments, she couldn't turn back the clock, while there were always younger, more beautiful girls out there, girls with no morals. She didn't understand how her life had turned out this way. It had been a roller coaster. She was living a life of privilege, yet she was still unhappy. Even the simple joy she remembered from tasting fried chicken for the first time was gone. She never imagined that at some silly, amateurish campus competition, she would hear a song that would move her to tears. She hadn't cried in years. She didn't cry. She didn't compromise. But in that moment, she realized how one-sided her thinking had been. She always complained that her daughter's school was second-rate, that it had no future. But even here, among people she'd written off as ordinary, there were flashes of brilliance. Sitting on a cheap bench, getting eaten alive by mosquitoes, she had heard a performance more moving than concerts for which she had paid thousands of dollars for a VIP box. Eyes can deceive you. Ears don't. Tears don't. So Victoria Vance was silent. She was thinking about what to say to her daughter. Both were lost in their own thoughts. And then they saw him, the boy helping the kid with a bicycle. He looked so different from the radiant figure on stage. Now he was just normal. He trotted over to help, received a thank you, waved goodbye with a faint smile, and then ran back to his friends, laughing and joking with them. An ordinary boy. An extraordinary boy. Suddenly, an alarm went off in Victoria's head. "You like him," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. "It's him, isn't it?" The wings were ordered. The loaded fries were on their way. The hard ciders arrived. Jordan was paying. Leo was ravenous. He felt like he could eat forever. When the 60 wings arrived, he polished off 40 of them himself. They were small, sold in batches of 20, but still, a young, growing body is a furnace. Alex, ever the health-conscious one, even at his age, ate sparingly. Jordan wanted to gorge himself, But he got in a lecture when he went home yesterday about losing weight. They've been telling him to lose weight since high school, a campaign that had successfully taken him from 140 pounds to 160. In college, the nagging continued, and he ballooned from 160 to 180. He'd only managed to lose 5 pounds over the summer by doing absolutely nothing. Jordan, Leo said, after demolishing his 40th wing and taking a sip of cider, when I gave Jessica the flowers, I told her they were from you, that you were just too shy to bring them up yourself. Jordan, who was mid-sip, spewed a mouthful of cider across the table. Dude, you really said that? I did, Leo said, grabbing another wing. Good luck figuring out how to handle that. That woman is a force of nature. He thought of the wings he'd shared with Stella that night. They'd had potatoes and other things, too. In the end, he'd eaten most of it. She barely touched her food. He snapped a picture of the mountain of wing bones on his plate and sent it to her. Her family had probably left by now. He sent a voice message. Did you eat dinner? This stuff is amazing. Then he sent a sticker, a cartoon rabbit, exhausted from hunger, collapsing face first on the ground. Stella, confronted by her mother's question, immediately deployed the standard 3-part denial. I don't know what you're talking about. It's not what you think. Don't be ridiculous. Victoria considered it. Maybe she was being paranoid. It wasn't like her daughter would fall for the first boy she saw. Stella's personality was so reserved. Maybe she wasn't even interested in romance yet. It was getting late, and visitors weren't allowed to stay in the dorms overnight. Still, Victoria couldn't stop herself from launching into a litany of warnings. She felt she was being remarkably restrained and empathetic. Her visit to the campus had, against all odds, slightly improved her opinion of the place. The students seemed decent enough. It was a far cry from her first impression when she dropped Stella off for freshman year. It had been raining that day, and a man carrying a massive, cheap nylon bag had walked by and splashed mud all over her white designer dress. She'd been furious. The man had apologized profusely, but with everyone staring, she couldn't even vent properly. Her custom-made dress was ruined. To make matters worse, the man had then pulled a handful of dirty-looking weeds from his bag and offered them to her as an apology, saying they made a tea that was good for cooling you down in the summer. The smell was awful. Victoria, enraged, had slapped his hand away and stormed off in disgust. The rest of the move-in process had been just as miserable. That first day had ended in a massive fight between her and Stella. Stella had spent her first night of college hiding in her bed, crying. That was the day Jessica Monroe had walked into the dorm, picked up an item from the desk next to her bed, and was immediately met with a cold voice. Excuse me. Please don't touch my things. Victoria reined in her temper. It's not that I don't want you to date, she said to Stella now. You're in your 20s. It's normal to like someone. It's just, a girl has to protect herself. There are so many terrible men out there. Even your father. Just then, Stella's phone buzzed. She snatched it up instantly, desperate for a distraction. Her mother bringing up her father's infidelity was her worst nightmare. She didn't have a privacy screen on her phone, so Victoria saw it all. The picture, the sticker, and the voice message notification. Stella didn't open it. She was trying to dodge her mother's lecture, so she tapped on Leo's message thread. She was about to play the voice note when she remembered her mother was right there. But Victoria's hand was faster than her words. She reached over and jabbed the play button. Did you eat dinner? This stuff is amazing. A familiar male voice filled the quiet space between them. It was calm, but with an undercurrent of warmth. Victoria's face darkened. Stella's face turned bright red. A cold wind seemed to blow through the warm night. Back at the wing joint, Leo was suddenly seized by a violent coughing fit. A stray fleck of chili had gone down the wrong way. Sean, who had been hunched over his phone editing video, barely eating, looked up. This was his normal state now that he was a dedicated TikToker. Hearing Leo choke, he passed him a glass of water. Don't eat so many wings this late, he said. I'll make some of that herbal tea my dad sent. It's good for inflammation. We should all have some, or we'll break out tomorrow. Leo gulped down the water, finally dislodging the chili. Sean's family remedies were surprisingly effective. He even had a small electric kettle in the dorm, and they had all benefited from his concoctions. Sometimes it was porridge, sometimes noodles, and sometimes bitter medicinal herbs. Oh man, thanks Sean, Jordan chimed in. I seriously need that. I feel a breakout coming on. As the palest of the group, his acne was always the most noticeable. It works way better than my chamomile tea, Alex agreed. An idea sparked in Leo's mind. He was a paid assistant now. Hey Sean, can you give me a couple of bundles of that stuff tonight? I'll give it to Professor Reed tomorrow. Sure, Sean said with a smile. I've still got a ton. If we run out, my dad can just go pick more. It grows all over the mountains back home. It's not worth anything. They finished their food quickly. Sean's editing skills had gotten incredibly fast. He learned that with TikTok, you couldn't overthink it. You had to post while the topic was hot. He didn't know how other people would react to the video of Leo's song, but he knew how it made him feel. Electric. His blood was boiling, screaming. In that moment, he felt like he finally understood Van Gogh. The twisted clocks, the screaming sunflowers. The line between high art and low art didn't exist. The feeling was the same. So he was desperate to get the video edited and posted. Someone else had probably already uploaded a version. With TikTok, you had to be bold, and you had to be fast. Otherwise, you'd be left in the dust. Plenty of people went viral from a video someone else posted, which was always a little awkward. He finally hit publish. A wave of relief washed over him. He pushed himself up from the plastic stool and paced around the crowded patio a few times to calm his nerves before sitting back down. Only then did he start to eat, methodically finishing off the leftover wings and fries, which had gone cold. He didn't mind. He didn't check the comments on his phone. He just ate, even peeling a few of the Messier wings for Leo, who was too lazy to do it himself. Leo nodded. Thanks, Dad. The wings were spicy and delicious, but a real pain to eat neatly. The video spread like wildfire. In her apartment, Professor Reed had just finished reading and was getting ready for bed. She opened TikTok for her nightly ritual of liking videos of her friends' flowers, gardens, and grandchildren. Then she saw it, a video of Leo singing in the university's main quad. She sat up, put on her reading glasses, and watched it again. And then a third time. She closed the app, went to the kitchen, and took 2 of her heart medication pills before finally heading to bed. An early night was one of the secrets to a long life. The comments were flooding in. Does Leo have a girlfriend? My daughter is a junior, beautiful and gentle. Dowry includes a condo in Chicago and a Tesla. It's me, the mother-in-law. Drop your number, I'll call you. I watched this so many times, and I just keep crying, loudly crying face, loudly crying face, loudly crying face. To be human. I'm so sorry. I am your girlfriend. I'm currently at the corner of Oak Street and 12th Avenue in Portland. Please come claim me immediately. He's so cute. I'm crying. My whole life just flashed before my eyes like a movie, frame by frame. My heart is broken. This brought tears to my eyes. Just finished watching. Cried twice. Saving this. I need to watch it over and over. I can't believe it. I literally cried into my bowl of cereal. When you get married, you have to let me know. I want to see what kind of girl gets a guy like you. I'll try harder in my next life. How do you get a 40-year-old woman like me so completely obsessed? I can't eat, I can't sleep. The results of Northwood Idol were in. Unsurprisingly, Leo took first place. Jessica Monroe came in fourth. All things considered, the judging was pretty fair. Second place went to a powerhouse freshman with a voice trained for opera. She was pretty, though maybe a little heavy by today's standards, and sang with an explosive force that felt like it could shatter glass. Third place went to that handsome freshman from the Honors College. The one Paige's roommate was obsessed with. He was apparently already a minor influencer. And fourth was Jessica. Her singing was decent, but her stage presence, crowd work, and overall appeal were off the charts. Leo had just enough time after demolishing the wings to make it back to the quad for the award ceremony. Victoria and Stella were still locked in a standoff. Victoria slapped her own calf a few times. The whole area was swollen with bites. The bug spray she'd bought from a campus convenience store was completely useless. It was as if she had some special quality that attracted every mosquito at Northwood State. Stella looked down at her mother's red, bumpy legs and couldn't help but let out a small laugh. Her mother had probably never suffered such an indignity in her life. She was a woman of high-end establishments, chauffeured cars, and exacting standards. Being dragged through a chaotic campus and crammed into a sweaty, breathless crowd was a new form of torture for her. Stella hadn't enjoyed it either, but her mother had enjoyed it even less. And seeing her mother so flustered brought Stella a small, wicked bit of joy. At her core, Stella wasn't exactly a good girl. She resented her mother, but sometimes she was more like her than she cared to admit. In this battle of wills, the daughter won. Victoria finally took a step back. I'm not trying to interfere, honey. I'm just worried about you. The world is full of bad people. Mom, I'm not in the world. I'm in college. If you don't let me date a classmate now, I'll just wait until I graduate and find someone from the world. You know I like cycling. I'll find a guy with tattoos who also likes to ride. Or, if you make me go abroad, I'll find a foreigner. I'll bring you home a son-in-law with blonde hair and blue eyes. Or a black one. Victoria's face went pale. I'm not saying you can't date. I actually thought that boy seemed very nice. You should bring him home to meet us sometime. Your father and I are free on the weekends. The words came out through gritted teeth. Stella fought to keep a straight face, suppressing the blush and the frantic beating of her heart. She forced herself to roll her eyes and look annoyed. What are you talking about, Mom? We're not dating. It's just a one-sided crush. He doesn't even like me back. You saw him. He was giving flowers to someone else. This part was genuine anger. She didn't have to fake it. Victoria frowned. Something didn't add up. That text message had seemed pretty intimate. But maybe she was right. Still, it was impossible. Her daughter was perfect. How could any boy not like her? Especially in favor of that girl. What was so great about her? She was average-looking, wore too much makeup, dressed trashily, danced scamlessly, and spoke with that ridiculous fake voice. Victoria thought of the girls she was always complaining about, the one she worried would seduce her husband. She'd gotten several of his secretaries fired over the years. A sense of crisis began to brew. She'd been worried about her daughter dating. Now she was worried her daughter couldn't get a date, that she would suffer from low self-esteem and rejection. Deep down, she knew it wasn't normal for a girl in her 20s to have never dated. She herself had been married at 20. She'd never dated anyone besides Stella's father. And now, because she cared too much, her life was a painful mess of jealousy and insecurity. Maybe she had been wrong. She had been so strict with Stella that her daughter didn't even know how to date. Maybe it would be better for her to date a few guys, get some experience, so she wouldn't end up like her mother, trapped in a lifelong entanglement with one man. Listen to me, Victoria said, her tone shifting. I'm a very good judge of character. That boy's shy. He likes animals. He helps people. With a guy like that, you can show a little vulnerability. Be a little bolder sometimes. Don't be afraid. You'll win him over. I'm sure of it. Stella stared at her. She wanted to record this. Was her mother possessed? Was this really her giving dating advice? Mom, do you hear yourself? You're the one who sent me articles titled, "Men who like animals are all cheaters, and helpful guys are just playing the field." Seeing the disbelief on her daughter's face, Victoria started, "Back when your father and I—" Stop, stop, Stella cut her off. Mom, it's late. You should go. Let the driver take you. I'll come home this weekend. She waved her mother off. Sitting in the blessedly air-conditioned car, Victoria felt a wave of exhaustion. But then, a fierce, competitive shopping urge ignited within her. She was going to buy her daughter a whole new wardrobe of beautiful clothes. Stella got back to the dorm. Jessica was there, the bouquet of flowers sitting on her desk. The atmosphere was thick with an unspoken tension. Jessica, a master of reading the room, spoke first. Stella, don't get the wrong idea. Leo was just helping out his roommate, Jordan. Jordan bought the flowers, but was too nervous to give them to me. So he pushed Leo on stage at the last second. He told me that's what happened. She turned her back to Stella and started changing out her stage outfit. Besides, she continued, you know my type. I like rich guys. Leo's too poor for me. Stella didn't say anything. People gave Jessica flowers all the time, and she usually tossed them straight in the trash, complaining that they were a waste of money. Can't eat them. Can't sell them. But this bouquet of cheap carnations and baby's breath was sitting carefully on her desk. A girl in love is both the most clueless and the most perceptive person in the world. When it comes to certain things, her intuition is terrifying. When Jessica turned back around, dressed in her pajamas, Stella finally smiled. It's fine. I know it's just a favor. Don't worry about it. The next morning, the soft, familiar glow of the time bar appeared. Tom was back on track. The system was in control, and Leo, an inherently lazy NPC at his core, breathed a sigh of relief. 6 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. Wash up, drink a glass of honey water. A happy gut makes for a happy day. After brushing his teeth, Leo scraped the bottom of the honey jar again. He'd forgotten to buy more. At this rate, the jar was going to last a lifetime. Today's honey water was barely sweet. The dorm was silent. Most seniors didn't get up this early. Sean looked like he'd pulled an all-nighter. Jordan had been up late, gaming. Alex, a man with 1,000 responsibilities, needed his beauty sleep. 6:30 a.m. to 7 a.m. Morning run. A healthy body sharpens the mind, fuels ambition, and maintains a positive spirit. As the second time bar appeared, Leo felt a thrill of anticipation. Because today's run included Stella, he felt none of the drama from the night before. His straightforward male brain hadn't registered any of the complex undercurrents. All he knew was that when he checked the system last night, Stella's affection rating had gone up by 1 point to 83. He'd texted her goodnight, explained the whole carnation situation with Jordan, and she'd replied, "See you tomorrow morning." He'd fallen asleep with a happy, goofy smile on his face. Before leaving, he grabbed the herbal tea Sean had given him. He had 2 large bundles of the dried herbs, easily enough to last the summer. It must have been a lot of work to pick and dry it all. A local specialty like this felt valuable. As expected, when Leo went out, he ran into Professor Reed. It was like they were 2 NPCs programmed to meet at the same spot at the same time, every day. Professor Reed's eyes looked a little puffy today, as if she hadn't slept well. She was swinging her arms from side to side when he approached. She wore a pair of lightweight, gold-rimmed glasses today, without the usual chain. "Good morning, Professor. My roommate, Sean Riley, brought this from his hometown. It's an herbal tea, good for the summer heat. And thank you again for the travel mugs yesterday." Professor Reed's interest was piqued. She took a bundle and smelled it. "That's the scent," she nodded. "You can buy in stores now, but it's farm-raised or something. The smell isn't the same." "Thank you, and please thank your roommate for me." She told him to set the herbs down next to her bag on the bench. She was just doing a few laps in the area. As Leo was about to leave, she called out, "Leo, I saw the video of you singing yesterday. You were very good." "Thank you, Professor." Leo grinned and took off at a run. Professor Reed watched the young, energetic figure disappear and smiled. As Leo neared the main fountain, his pace instinctively slowed, but his heart started to race. There's a special kind of happiness that comes from anticipation. Waiting for a flower to bloom, waiting for spring, waiting for a sunny day, waiting for the rain, waiting for the wind, waiting for you. When he saw the girl in the white tracksuit standing by the fountain, his heartbeat finally steadied. The smile on his face widened. "Stella, good morning." Stella watched him run up to her, her head tilted. "Good morning," she smiled. She had a secret weapon today. She'd chosen a form-fitting white athletic outfit that, while not overtly revealing, showcased her perfectly proportioned figure. She wasn't buxom, but her lines were flawless. Her short hair, which usually fell in her eyes when she ran, was held back today by a small clip with a single red jewel, pulling a small section of her bangs off her forehead. It was playful and adorable. For some reason, looking at her today, Leo thought she seemed incredibly soft and sweet, like a cherry in early May, not fully ripe, but bursting with sweetness. On their run today, for some reason, other students were smiling and saying hello to him. Leo didn't like it. He was busy. He was on a date. His brain could generally only handle 2 tasks at once. When he was eating, for instance, he could manage eating his main course and a side dish simultaneously. But adding a social interaction on top of that was pushing it. It was the same now. He was running with Stella, and strangers were interrupting. It felt weird not to respond, but it also felt weird to respond, especially since he had no idea who these people were. The only other time this happened was when he was walking with Alex. When you walked across campus with Alex, you were constantly bombarded with greetings. "Hey, Alex, morning, mister. Vice President. What's up, Cheeryong?" Alex was the president of the calligraphy club, the vice president of the student government, and the head of the external relations committee. Leo and the others always felt incredibly awkward and tried to stand a few feet away from him. But Alex always handled it with grace, responding to everyone with a friendly, approachable air, perfectly in line with his senator-in-training persona. Leo and Stella picked up the pace and headed for the path around the campus lake, where there were fewer people. He finally understood why couples always looked for secluded spots. Right now, he didn't want to see anyone else. All the other NPCs on campus usually kept to themselves, but today they were suddenly interacting with him, and it was a little unsettling. Stella ran alongside him. When she was getting ready to leave the dorm that morning, she'd seen Jessica, who was wearing a pair of tiny shorts and an old t-shirt. Complaining about the heat, Jessica had cut off the bottom half of the shirt, exposing a wide swath of her toned stomach. As she sat up and yawned, her long hair a tangled mess, it was clear she wasn't wearing a bra, the thin fabric of the old shirt hiding almost nothing. Even as another woman, Stella had felt herself blush. Now, looking at the clean, wholesome Leo beside her, that familiar sour feeling bubbled up in her chest. A Capricorn girl keeps her troubles to herself. She'll analyze a situation to death, tear herself down, then tear down the world, building a thicker shell around her heart with every disappointment. Over time, the grit of a Capricorn becomes a pearl, brilliant, beautiful, and cold. As they ran side by side, Leo sensed Stella's mood shift. When they first met up, she had seemed happy, her excitement matching his. But after running for a bit, the light seemed to have gone out of her. He had no idea what had happened. Was she tired? Did her parents lecture her? When Jordan came back from trip home, he would talk for 8 hours straight, unloading his emotions like a tank firing indiscriminately. Then he'd go argue with people in group chats, and after that, he'd get on League of Legends and scream at his teammates. But he couldn't picture Stella doing any of that. Complaining to her roommates? Arguing with strangers online? Cursing at people in a video game? The image didn't fit. So how did she deal with her emotions? Did she just bottle them up? Study? Do practice problems? Leo, the simple NPC, figured that all humans needed some kind of emotional outlet. Keeping it all inside was unhealthy. And Stella was human. She must need one, too. He slowed his pace and changed direction. To his surprise, she followed without a word, lost in her own thoughts. She definitely had something on her mind. They ran to a small pavilion on a low hill by the lake. There was no one else around. Leo, the NPC, felt a flicker of joy. There were advantages to being an early riser. Aside from a few old professors, the students were all still asleep. Otherwise, a prime spot like this, with a view, water, and tree cover, would have been taken long ago. Want to rest for a bit? Leo asked. Okay, Stella nodded. The stone bench inside the pavilion was surprisingly clean, polished smooth by generations of student butts. Still, Leo took out a tissue and wiped it down. Stella would probably appreciate that. There was a bit of morning dew, and the tissue came away damp. After he threw in the trash, he turned around to find Stella holding out a bottle of water. He had just seen her take a drink from it. The clear plastic rim had pressed against her soft, pink lips as the water flowed down her elegant throat. Her slender white neck was tilted back, and he could even see the fine, downy hairs on her skin. Suddenly, Leo understood why vampires always bit the neck. Not the arm, not the butt, not the thigh. Her fingers were wrapped around the bottle as she offered it to him. He reached out, and his hand gently covered hers. He just stood there, holding her hand over the bottle, looking at her. Are you going to drink it? Stella asked again. Leo snapped out of it, flustered. He took the bottle, letting go of her hand. Strange. When he held his own left hand with his right, he felt nothing. But touching Stella's hand sent a jolt through him, like a static shock. She was electric. In his panic, he forgot his manners. He'd been planning to drink without touching his lips to the part she'd used, but after the jolt from her hand, the thought vanished. He just drank. Stella watched him take her water bottle and put it to his lips. The muscles in his throat moved as he swallowed. He was standing, she was sitting, so she was looking up at him at the line of his jaw. He drank a little too fast, and a trickle of water escaped, running down his neck. Stella looked down, trying to act casual, as if she hadn't just watched his lips touch the same spot hers had been moments before. She wasn't exactly popular in her dorm, partly because she was a bit of a germaphobe and hated people touching her things. But now, not only had Leo drunk from her water, he'd done it in a way that meant their lips had almost certainly touched the same tiny area. Stella, the girl who could talk tough but couldn't hide a blush, felt her earlobes turn fiery red. Leo sat down and pulled out his phone. Want to play a round? Huh. Get on. League of Legends. Stella had a game on her phone. She'd down electric. In his panic, he forgot his manners. He'd been planning to drink without touching his lips to the part she'd used, but after the jolt from her hand, the thought vanished. He just drank. Stella watched him take her water bottle and put it to his lips. The muscles in his throat moved as he swallowed. He was standing, she was sitting, so she was looking up at him at the line of his jaw. He drank a little too fast, and a trickle of water escaped, running down his neck. Stella looked down, trying to act casual, as if she hadn't just watched his lips touch the same spot hers had been moments before. She wasn't exactly popular in her dorm, partly because she was a bit of a germaphobe and hated people touching her things. But now, not only had Leo drunk from her water, he'd done it in a way that meant their lips had almost certainly touched the same tiny area. Stella, the girl who could talk tough but couldn't hide a blush, felt her earlobes turn fiery red. Leo sat down and pulled out his phone. Want to play a round? Huh. Get on. League of Legends. Stella had a game on her phone. She downloaded it once out of sheer boredom after watching her roommates play, because they told her it was so easy a kid could play it. She almost never played video games. They said a kid could play it, but she had spent half an hour trying to figure it out before giving up in frustration. I don't know how, she said, embarrassed to admit it. Leo wasn't surprised. A girl who could speak Portuguese but couldn't play League? It seemed plausible. I'll teach you. He sat down next to her. They both opened the app. Hers hadn't been opened in so long it needed to update. A cool morning breeze blew in off the lake. Someone had once told him that the hill above the pavilion was a cemetery. But in this moment, Leo felt no fear. The quiet was nice. They could be alone. He just sat next to her, waiting for the game to update, and he wasn't bored at all. In fact, he wished the update would take longer. This wasn't a classroom. There were no other living people around. They were sitting a little closer than usual, and it wasn't study time. It was technically running time, but Leo effortlessly ignored the time bar. I promise I'll make up the run later. The next bar was breakfast time. He could make that up too. Right now, he was just sitting next to Stella, and the entire side of his body felt numb, where it was pressed against hers. If he leaned back just a little, it would feel like she was halfway in his arms. In these early stages of romance, Leo's mind was a blank slate, filled with only one thought. Get closer just a little closer. He wanted to experience that tingling, electric feeling over and over again. Stella's mind, however, was a chaotic mess. The tingling was only a small part of it. The rest was a jumble of anxieties. One moment, she was telling herself she shouldn't like him, that she was cold and would only end up hurting him. The next, she was worrying that he liked someone else, that there were plenty of other girls who were interested in him. As he sat there, an idea popped into Leo's head. If he lifted her up and put her on his lap, it would be much easier to teach her how to play. Sitting side by side was awkward, but on his lap, his arms could go around her waist to hold the phone. It would be perfect. Stella. Yeah. This time, she didn't mishear him. How much do you weigh? 800. Probably a little less. He lifted her up and settled her onto his lap. Don't you think the stone bench is a little cold? He explained. I think I read somewhere that girls aren't supposed to sit on cold surfaces. It's bad for you. Stella said nothing. Her earlobes were burning. Leo's courage was like a puffer fish. Under certain stimulation, it would suddenly inflate to an enormous size. Like right now, he had actually picked Stella up and put her on his lap. She didn't call him a pervert or slap him. She just sat there, her body rigid. She was like a lychee fresh from the tree. The tough outer shell was gone, leaving only the thin, transparent inner membrane that encased the sweet flesh. It was firm, but a single poke could break it, releasing a faint, sweet scent. Not the cloying sweetness of an overripe fruit, but something more delicate, with just a hint of tartness. You don't have to do this, Stella whispered, her voice so small she could barely hear herself. She was dressed from head to toe in a Lululemon tracksuit. The jacket was zipped up to her chin, and the pants covered her ankles. If Jessica had been wearing this, the zipper would probably be pulled down to her cleavage. But Lululemon's design philosophy was all about the science of feel. Their clothes were made to move with you, to feel like a second skin. So, as Leo held her, he could feel the warmth of his legs through the fabric of her pants. She could feel his thighs beneath her, a searing heat. Forget about playing a stupid game. At this point, her brain had completely short-circuited. Leo was feeling it too. He had severely overestimated his self-control, his courage, and everything else. He had been so careful, holding her only by her clothed waist. It had been a spur-of-the-moment decision. But the moment he'd lifted her, it felt like he was holding a naked woman, impossibly soft. When he set her on his lap, his brain crashed. His blood was on fire. They were both intensely uncomfortable and intensely aroused. Their bodies were burning up where they touched. The update's done. You just have to close it and open it again, Leo said, trying desperately to distract himself. He saw the progress bar on her phone finish, and he reached around to tap the screen for her. Timmy, the game announced. Play with WeChat friends, Leo instructed. His courage had deflated again. He didn't dare to press his advantage, to pull her fully into his arms and teach her hand over hand. He had just picked her up and put her on his lap. She was sitting sideways at a 90-degree angle to him. From his position, he had a perfect view of her profile. Her eyelashes, the bridge of her nose, half of her lips, her pale neck, the gentle rise and fall of her chest, her straight back, her slender waist, her well-toned legs. Leo, the pufferfish, was frozen. He was both thrilled and terrified. He needed something to do, something to distract himself from his nerves. Teach her how to play the game. If Alex had been there, he would have smacked Leo on the back of the head. A beautiful girl in your arms, and you play a video game? Are you a monk? What game is better than kissing and cuddling? Make a move. Not on the game, you idiot, on her. But Alex wasn't there, and the ghosts in the cemetery weren't talking. So Leo decided to be a very diligent teacher. Since you're new, you should pick the easiest champion. Garen. He's simple. He's tanky, hard to kill. His weakness is that he doesn't do a lot of damage, so he can't kill other people very easily either. Stella, fighting through her embarrassment, try to focus. Hard to kill, but can't kill anyone else either? What's the point of him? To waste time? Leo himself was only slightly better than a total beginner. He picked his go-to champion, Ari. And so, the tall, slender girl began clumsily maneuvering the hulking figure of Garen across the screen, his giant sword swinging wildly as his deep voice boomed. For Demacia. Meanwhile, the mild-mannered boy played as the seductive, nine-tailed fox, Ari, whose breathy voice purred. Don't you trust me? Let's have some real fun. They're mine now. Playtime's over. Should I make your pulse rise? Or, stop, tell me a secret. Leo was blushing furiously. He'd heard these voice lines 1,000 times, but right now, with Stella on his lap, they all sounded incredibly suggestive. Stella fumbled with the controls, watching her mighty Garen get pummeled relentlessly. Every time she tried to attack an enemy, she'd end up hitting one of her own towers, or thin air, or a tree. She couldn't even land a hit on the minions. And Garen just kept shouting, "Justice." But what justice? He looked so strong, but he was completely useless. A bead of sweat trickled down Stella's forehead. She was getting serious. Leo felt her shift on his lap, adjusting for a more comfortable position. When things got intense, she would fidget slightly. He was done for her. His Ari died. Oh, they got me. The champion sighed. He had to wait at the base to respawn. Garen, the unkillable champion, was also killed. He was respawning too. Ari was back to full health, but seeing that Garen was still recovering, Leo decided to wait for her. So the two champions stood next to each other at the base, doing nothing. Their three teammates, in the middle of a frantic battle, suddenly realized they were alone. What were the other two doing back at the base? They had no idea that Ari and Garen were having a romantic moment, waiting for each other to heal, and even once they were healed, still not rejoining the fight. Dude, are they asleep? Did Ari and Garen fall asleep together? They're taking the top tower. What is our mid laner doing? Stella accidentally hit the voice chat button just in time to hear a stream of curses. She looked at Leo, mortified. Leo quickly muted the chat, saving them from the next verbal assault. To be fair, if he had teammates like this, he'd probably be yelling too. It's okay, he said, trying to comfort her. He was worried the verbal abuse would upset her. The people who play this early in the morning are always like this. They're either still drunk from the night before or half asleep. He looked up and saw that her face was flushed and she was biting her lip. Stella, he whispered. Yeah. He leaned in and his lips gently met hers. He wrapped an arm around her, pulling her close. It was a soft, tentative touch, a light press, a gentle nibble. Her arms came up and looped around his neck. She responded, "For Demetia, don't you trust me?" On the stone bench, their forgotten phones lit up with the sounds of the game. The birds in the trees chirped, and in the cemetery up the hill, all was quiet as the wind rustled through the pines. How could saliva be sweet? It was sweet. Leo, an authoritative NPC who had just conducted a first-hand experiment, could now confirm this conclusion. Practice truly is the sole criterion for testing truth. If you've never kissed someone, you'll never know. If he could, he would erect a plaque in front of the pavilion, site of first kiss. This ordinary little structure would, for the rest of his life, be anything but ordinary. From now on, any similar pavilion he saw would be transformed. 6 corners, black-tiled roof, red pillars, a stone bench running around the perimeter. He now understood why the section of the bench near the red pillar was the most polished and smooth. If you sat there, you could lean back against the pillar. It gave you stability when you were holding a girl in your arms. The view was good, too. You could see if anyone was coming up the path and react in time. And with a pillar at your back, you didn't have to worry about someone sneaking up behind you. He didn't know how long they kissed. The game of League of Legends had long since ended in a crushing defeat. Their ears were burning, maybe from their teammates' curses, maybe from the heat of being so close. The kiss was already a huge step. Leo didn't dare let his hands wander. They stayed wrapped around Stella's waist. Her waist was so soft, so slender. He remembered watching dance performances where the male dancers would lift the female dancers, their waists impossibly thin and flexible. He had never found it particularly beautiful. Now, he realized he had been wrong. How could it not be beautiful? He felt like he could lift Stella's slender waist 300 times without stopping. No exaggeration. He could fly. He could take Stella and fly with her. That's what the kiss felt like. But time couldn't be stopped. And maybe that's what made it so wonderful. Because it was fleeting, it was precious. It was a first kiss for both of them. They were clumsy, but the emotion was there. They were completely lost in it. And putting the girl on your lap? A truly brilliant move. Not recommended if you aren't strong enough to lift her, though. Or if you don't know her that well. Biologically speaking, this was exactly what they were supposed to be doing. To fall in love when you're young, when you're healthy, when kissing doesn't lead to strange stomach issues or hormonal imbalances or cavities. Dating at this age, if it progressed far enough, was conducive to procreation, a contribution to the continuation of the human species. If you waited until you were older, things got complicated. Your body wasn't as resilient. You were stressed. And making a baby became a whole production, requiring you to quit smoking and drinking and track ovulation for years. When you're young, you just have to make sure you use protection. Of course, Leo wasn't thinking about babies right now. He had taken biology. He knew you couldn't get pregnant from kissing. He was just silently thanking the system. If he didn't have his unshakable core buff right now, he would have completely lost himself. But the buff had its limits. It allowed him one kiss, a second one, and all his resolve would crumble. So, like a gentleman, He respectfully pulled away. But Stella didn't move. She just buried her face in his shoulder, their necks entwined like two swans. She was half shy, half flustered. As she rested her head on his shoulder, a new scent filled her senses, enveloping her. Leo's scent was different, not sweet. It was like the smell of clean sheets dried in the sun. It wasn't a perfume, but it was clean with a faint hint of herbs. The tea from Sean. The unique combination of scents created a smell that was just him. Some memories are visual, some are auditory. The ones tied to smell are the most lasting. In this moment, she wasn't thinking about the future, or Jessica, or her mother. She just wanted to stay there, nestled against him. It felt so happy. Her body felt limp, like a vine that wanted to wrap itself around a tree, quietly covering every branch until it burst into a riot of blossoms. But Leo, her tree, wouldn't allow it. If he held her any longer, his pufferfish courage would inflate again. He felt hot. He wanted to take off his own clothes, and he wanted to take off hers. Pufferfish were definitely poisonous. They made you lose your mind. He let go, and Stella immediately shot up like a startled rabbit. Leo stood up too. They faced each other. He saw that her lips were red and swollen. Her hair was a mess, and the little red jewel clip was hanging crookedly from her bangs, about to fall off. It was adorable. She looked so beautifully alive. He reached out to fix the clip. Stella, thinking he was going to hug her again, turned her head shyly. He took the clip out of her hair and handed it to her, a small smile on his face. They were both blushing. They left the pavilion and continued up the hill. In the throes of a new romance, you automatically gravitate toward deserted places. The path got steeper. Leo reached for Stella's hand. With their fingers intertwined, the path didn't seem so difficult anymore. It was quiet, peaceful, happy. After walking for a while, they came to a gate. Leo's eyes went wide. Holy crap, the campus legend was true. It really was a cemetery. Stella was a little stunned, too. She hadn't paid any attention to campus legends, but she could hardly believe that her first kiss had taken place right next to a graveyard. The gate wasn't very secure. You could easily step over it. Leo wondered if any couples had actually done that. The path inside looked much smoother and easier to walk on. But, better not. On a headstone near the entrance were two photographs. A stern-looking old man and a stern-looking old woman, side by side. A double plot. Being buried next to the person you love would be a nice way to go, Leo thought. Stella was getting a little scared now, gripping his hand tightly. They turned and headed back down the hill. When they passed the pavilion again, they both blushed at the sight of the bench where they had been sitting. They had been so caught up in the kiss, they'd had no idea what was behind them. Our apologies, he thought to the residents of the hill. They walked down the rest of the hill hand in hand. Do you like fruit? Stella asked. It's okay, Leo replied. Then what do you want? I'll buy it for you. Honey. The morning sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. Leo, the NPC, thought the scenery was beautiful. The world's graphic designer had done a good job. Stella had a class with an exchange professor that morning, so they didn't have time for breakfast together. Leo ran to the legendary breakfast spot and got takeout bowls for his roommates. The woman who ran the place looked even more beautiful than usual today, wearing a black top with mesh cutouts that accentuated her figure. But Leo barely noticed. She wasn't as pretty as Stella. At this point, he could see Stella's face in the shape of the noodles she ladled into the bowls. He got 4 deluxe bowls, loaded with everything: liver, beef, fried dough sticks, shrimp, and green onions. He sprinted back to the dorm. 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Eat breakfast. Prevents gallstones and kidney stones. A man without stones is a healthy man. It was 8 o'clock by the time he got back. The dorm was still eerily quiet. Feeling like a rooster who had just laid an egg, Leo couldn't contain his excitement and started making a racket. Sean, woken from a deep sleep, sat up blearily, clutching his phone. He tried to check his TikTok notifications, only to find the battery was completely dead. He fumbled for his charging cable. Jordan was awakened by the smell. He sat up, eyes still closed, sniffing the air. I smell fried dough sticks, he mumbled. Wait, and the scent of a woman. He pried open his right eye, still picking sleep out of his left. Leo, something's different about you. Why do you smell so fragrant? Alex, who had also been woken up, sat up perfectly straight in his pristine silk pajamas. He looked like a husband who had woken up alone after his wife had stayed out all night, his pajamas still perfectly unwrinkled. Jordan might have been the one who was superficially flashy, but Alex was the one who was truly, deeply refined. Alex opened his eyes, took one look at Leo, and delivered his verdict. You kissed her. Leo froze. Damn it. He'd been caught. He quickly placed a deluxe breakfast bowl in front of Alex. Your Highness, your meal is served. Alex just smiled. It was that classic leadership smile. Warm on the surface, but with a cold, calculating edge that made you want to confess all your crimes. It was unbearable. A kiss was not something you share with the guys. Leo tried to change the subject. Alex, on my run this morning, a bunch of people said hi to me. It was so weird. Sean's phone, now plugged in, lit up with TikTok notifications. Leo, you're famous, he yelled. You're actually famous this time. Leo sighed. Sean, you said the same thing last time. The tremor in your voice, the inflection, it's all identical. No, this time it's different. Sean took off his glasses, scrubbed them furiously on the hem of his pajama pants, and put them back on. Come look at my DMs. His TikTok inbox was flooded with notifications. There were messages from advertisers and even interview requests from what looked like legitimate publications. Hello, this is Dana Myers, a reporter for Modern Student Quarterly. I would like to schedule an interview with you. My contact information is 555-0187. Same for text. Hope to hear from you. Hello. Sorry to bother you, but I'm Claire Fontaine, a freelance reporter for one of the world's top 100 magazines. Hearth and Home was founded in 1970 and has always been dedicated to discovering beautiful people and stories. We would love to do a feature on Leo Foster. Would he be open to an interview? It would be a 1-hour phone call at his convenience. My number is 555-0163. Text is fine. I'll look forward to your reply. Thank you. Alex, what do we do about these? Sean asked nervously. Are they for real? The video of Leo singing at the fire mic had been popular, but they'd never gotten formal interview requests like this. Maybe it was because this one clearly took place at the university during an official competition. Leo was shocked too. The name Modern Student Quarterly made his heart beat faster, and his high school English teacher had made them subscribe to Hearth and Home to improve their writing. What if his teacher saw his picture in there? That would be incredible. Even Alex looked surprised. He never would have guessed that Leo, the most innocent and unassuming one in the dorm, would be the first to blow up. But Alex was no stranger to the spotlight. In middle school, he'd got an article published in a magazine and won a citywide public speaking award. The local media had wanted to interview him. At first, he'd been ecstatic, but his family had put a stop to it. His grandfather was a high-ranking official in the state government at the time. Alex's success, they'd implied, might not have been entirely his own. In high school, he'd worked even harder, winning first place in the state debate championship and a national essay competition. He was sure those achievements were his and his alone. His grandfather's influence didn't reach that far. The media came calling again. He'd been thrilled, ready for his moment. Then, suddenly, he got word that his grandfather was being forced into early retirement. The interview requests vanished. 2 outlets that had already interviewed him never published the stories. Only one small paper ran a piece. That's when he realized how naive he'd been. He thought he was a big shot, but his success was still tied to his family. He learned then that without real power, without being truly exceptional, things like interviews were just fluff. They were ammunition for your enemies when you were down, and they didn't add much when you were up. In fact, the one interview that was published, in which he had been a little too arrogant and the reporter had exaggerated some details, had been used as evidence to attack his family for cronyism. Alex Young, scion of a political family, had learned a hard lesson at a young age. If you remember correctly, Leo had said his aunt worked for the Board of Education. Alex didn't think Leo was prepared to handle the kind of scrutiny that came with this kind of sudden, viral fame. He'd seemed sharper lately, but he was no match for a seasoned journalist. Even Alex himself wouldn't be. You can add them and thank them for their interest, Alex advised. But before you agree to an interview, think about your life. Do you have enough material to fill a full-page article? What have you accomplished? What are your biggest regrets? What mistakes have you made? You have no idea what kind of headline they'll use, what angle they'll take. If you're not prepared, you should hold off. Leo's mind flashed to the articles he remembered from those magazines. He lost his mother at 6 and raised his family alone. The triumph of a unicorn. The brilliant life of a disabled youth. From the mountains to Harvard, they were all inspiring, but also incredibly tragic. These weren't normal people. What do you have to talk about? His parents were alive, he had both his legs, and he hadn't gotten into an Ivy League school. His life story was completely unremarkable. He was grateful for Alex's advice. If he'd gotten swept up in the excitement and agreed, he could just see the headlines now. The college kid who sang "To Be Human" is sorry for stealing his teacher's valve stem caps in middle school. Or "To Be Human, I'm sorry, a chronicle of a failed college student's life." He followed Alex's advice, adding reporters and sending polite, honored, but firm refusals. Suddenly, a mechanical voice echoed in his mind. "Congratulations, host. You have passed the preliminary trial of fame and fortune. You have not been swayed by the allure of celebrity. You will not sacrifice your principles or integrity for personal gain. Your values remain uncorrupted. An outstanding trophy husband is not easily tempted by vanity. An outstanding trophy husband builds his empire on a foundation of honesty and integrity. You deserve the best. Congratulations on passing the preliminary trial. Reward: basic photography skill buff, level 2, permanent. This was a serious upgrade. You remembered Sean's photography skill was only at level 1, and Sean could already make a 5 out of 10 look like a 7. Alex, seeing Leo staring into space, added, "Don't worry. When you're truly successful, you'll be on the big screen. This is nothing." "Thanks, Alex." "Seriously," Leo said. Alex's mind was on a completely different level. Sometimes Leo would have a feeling or an intuition, but he could never put it into words. Alex would say one thing, and everything would click into place. Curiosity piqued, Leo asked, "Alex, did you ever get in trouble for rebelling as a kid?" Sean and Jordan leaned in, eager for the gossip. Alex thought for a moment, then nodded gravely. "Yes. In middle school, I really wanted to get my ear pierced. My dad almost killed me." "Why? Was he that strict?" Jordan asked. "Because," Alex said with a heavy sigh, "you can't get into West Point with an ear piercing. 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Study English. Learning is the ladder to human progress. The more you learn, the more ladders you have. And with those ladders, you can easily climb into a rich woman's life." A new time bar appeared. Leo couldn't stay in the dorm. Sean was right. He had gone viral. The account, My Amazing Roommate, had gained over 20,000 new followers overnight, bringing the total to 34,000. And it was still climbing. The number of saves was particularly impressive. It meant people were invested, not just scrolling past. The video had over 700,000 likes and a view count with too many zeros to count. There were even more offers for sponsor content, asking Leo to sing for a product ad. They were offering anywhere from $800 to $2,000 per video. The DMs were overwhelming, so Jordan was helping manage them. Jordan, with his face masks, designer sneakers, and anime figurines, seemed like a frivolous spender. But the shoes he bought often resold for a profit, as did his collectibles. In the dorm, everyone else's money was spent and gone. Jordan's money, however, seemed to circulate. It must have been something he picked up from his family of entrepreneurs. He had a natural knack for it. His parents might call him useless, but his ability to make money was already leagues ahead of his roommates. Jordan agreed that they shouldn't take any of the ad deals. They were low quality, and it would cheapen the brand they were building. The channel was just starting to take off. Selling out now would be a waste. It would be like learning to ride a bike and immediately trying to fly a plane. Sean, high on success, was also getting a little carried away. The video was so popular that his application to the TikTok Creator Fund had been instantly approved. He already had over $100 in his account. It was a breakthrough, proof that their efforts weren't in vain. This path was viable. Leo found an empty classroom and forced himself to focus. He was actually starting to enjoy English. Dr. Novak, the formidable professor he met at the conference, would occasionally message him, and he used it as an opportunity to practice his speaking skills. Once he got over the initial hurdle, a language wasn't so difficult. It was just a matter of memorizing vocabulary and understanding the grammar. He felt like with a bit more work, he could easily pass the Advanced English Proficiency exam. The test was in December. He made a mental note. He also looked up the certification for advanced nursing assistants. That was in January. He could sign up for that, too. Taking certification exams was a standard part of junior and senior year. Anyway, he had just settled down to study when his phone buzzed. It was a message from a middle school classmate he hadn't spoken to in years. He'd sent a video. Then came a long voice message. "Leo, is this you? I was scrolling through TikTok and saw this. You look great, man. You've gotten handsome, and your singing is insane." Leo opened the video. It wasn't Sean's original post. It was a clip version with a new title, "The Cry of a Generation. A college student speaks for us all." Leo gasped. The cry of a generation? Him? How could he possibly represent all college students? The comment section was probably a war zone. Sure enough, people were arguing. If a college student is already singing to be human, what's he going to sing when he gets a real job? He typed back a lame reply. It was just for a school event. The fact that even his middle school classmates were seeing the video was surreal. Maybe it was because they were friends on the app. He was about to put his phone away when it rang. It was his aunt, Sky. He had to answer. "Leo, honey," she said, her voice filled with concern. "I saw the video of you singing. You were wonderful. So handsome. Are you okay? Did something happen? If you're having a hard time, you can tell me. We're your uncle. We can help." Leo groaned. His aunt had just sent him a video via text. The title, Heartbroken College Student Sings and Makes Everyone Cry. And Sky, I'm fine, really. It was just a school talent show. Everything's great. Nothing's wrong. Say hi to my uncle for me. How's my cousin? I'll come see him when I'm home for break. He finally managed to hang up, sweat beading on his forehead. His aunt had always been more like a big sister to him. He had to focus. But then his phone buzzed again. It was from his cousin, Kevin, the one everyone in the family praised, the one who'd gone to a top university and now worked a prestigious job in a big city, but lived in a basement apartment. Leo, you're famous. My coworker sent me a video this morning, said the singer was amazing. I took one look and was like, hey, that's my cousin. Wow, you've changed a lot. I had no idea you could sing like that. You're really good on camera. He had also forwarded a video. This one was titled, The Son-in-Law Every Mother Dreams of. It was a longer clip, including his self-introduction at the end. Leo sighed. Hey, Kevin, it was just for a school competition. Leo, listen to me. You're going to be huge. You have star potential. I have to get back to work, but we need to talk about this later. Seriously. Leo felt his cousin's manic excitement through the phone, but with his unshakable core buff, he was much more rational than he used to be. This wasn't real fame. In the age of viral content, even A-list celebrities couldn't be sure of their longevity. One day you're hot, the next you're not. He was a nobody. He was just a normal-looking guy who had struck a chord with a few people. Calm down. Focus on your studies. Everything else is just noise. He decided to turn off his phone, but then he saw one more message. One of the professors in his contacts had messaged him. Professor Luke Hoffman, who had given that career guidance lecture, had reached out. Leo had added him after the lecture, but had been too intimidated to say anything since. He'd meant to ask for an autograph from his wife, the famous director Penelope Hayes, but he'd lost his nerve. The most he'd done was buy the professor's book, The Late Bloomer's Advantage, and occasionally like a picture of his cat on social media. Professor Hoffman had sent him the original video from Sean's account. Leo, I heard you sing. My wife and I both loved it. You cured her insomnia. She cried herself to sleep last night. Just kidding. When you have time, come over for dinner. My wife wants to give you her autograph and get yours in return. Also, I'm a great cook. Leo's jaw dropped. Professor Hoffman was a true master of the trophy husband arts. An inspiration. A great cook with a sense of humor. He quickly replied, Thank you, Professor. I'm free anytime. Whatever works for you. Professor Hoffman replied almost instantly. Great. Come over for dinner tonight, then. My wife happens to have the evening off. Leo, okay. He felt like his phone was going to keep buzzing forever. At this rate, he'd spend the whole day answering calls and messages and get no studying done. Half an hour had already passed. He finally switched his phone off. Time to study, but he couldn't stop the excited thrumming in his veins.